All right, so now we're recording. I'll do a little introduction. Let me figure this out again. Screen share. Is everybody seeing a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Seen, yep.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Got it.
Cool. All right. Good evening. Again, we're doing our second webinar just to kind of talk about how this got started. So I own and operate a training company called Western Buckeye Training up here in Northwest Ohio. And there's a board up services company called Schwartz here in Lima. They're actually in my first due at my station. And they are very active in the fire service. They provide a lot of training. They help support like lunches and stuff like that during seminars and things of that sort. And so Ben Schwartz reached out to me about doing some hands-on training this summer. And we had it all scheduled out. We were going to do some engine classes, some RIT classes and things like that. We had acquired houses. It was going to be phenomenal. And then COVID-19 decided to join us and mess everything up. So Ben and I kind of brainstormed some ideas, and we came up with doing this webinar. And I think the fire service has pretty much adopted this platform, which is wonderful. So Schwartz is sponsoring this. They are creating a content type of website platform. So this will be recorded and put into that platform that they're going to use, and it'll be debuted here in the near future. So that's kind of how this whole webinar got started. This is our second one. If you don't know who I am, I'm Jordan. I work for American Township Fire Department in Lima, Ohio. We butt up to the city. We run 2 stations, 8 guys a shift, just shy of 3,000 calls a year. We do both EMS transport and all that good stuff as well. My contact info, my cell phone number, my email address is on there as well, and then all of our social media platforms that you can find our content on. But I have a picture of my family on here. That's my wife, Brittany, and my 3 dogs. Just because we do these fire classes, trainings, and we're nerds of the fire service, we're also human beings. We have families, and we do things outside of the fire service as well. So I just try to throw that down, that we're still down-to-earth people just because we're into the job. Today, actually, my wife and I went walking, and she's going to kill me for doing this. We went walking today, and we have a wiener dog. His name's Benson, and he goes on all these adventures, right? And she bought a book bag for him, and he's able to sit in the book bag. And I don't know whose wind is or whose hair is blowing more in the wind, hers or his. So we like to have fun and go out and do a lot of adventures. Tonight's class is going to be over details of the search. And this is something this is what we're all here about in the fire service. This is why you are on the fire department, is to, help others and make that save when it's there. We have Sean Duffy, who works for the City of Venice Fire Department. We have Pablo, and Pablo, if I butcher your last name, I'm sorry. Jenner from Marion County Fire Department. And then we have Chris. Chris, I'm not even going to attempt it.
It's all good, brother. Hey, it's all good.
His nickname is Tog. We just throw it there. He works for the city of Estro. And then we have a guest that I wasn't expecting, which is wonderful, and that's John. John, how do you say your last name?
John Haywick.
John Haywick. And where are you from, brother?
City of Passaic Fire Department in New Jersey, just outside New York.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to have you on here as well.
Thank you for having me on.
So Sean and Pablo and Chris, they're all a part of a group called Build Your Culture, and they're on Facebook and Instagram, right?
Yes, sir.
So they have their own group as well, and that's the beauty of the fire service. Everyone has a point of view, and they're trying to get their information out for people to learn from. So please check them out on Facebook as well when you have the opportunity. So I met Sean and Chris when we were out west for the worst fire con. We've become really good friends. And John, I foresee us all becoming good friends. This is my second time doing this webinar, so you can judge me just a little bit on this one. All right, you guys got a little bit of lenience on it. Like I said, we're going to record this and post it later. There's over 100 people signed up. I don't know how many are actually on the platform now, but we'll take a look. I have everybody muted except for the instructors. If you have a question, unmute yourself, ask it. Once you're done, remute yourself, because if 10,000 people try talking at once, it just looks terrible. For Ohio people, if you need your continuing education certificates, I have a link that I'm going to send out in the chats. Please copy and paste that, and then it'll send you to a Google document. Type your name and your address, your email address, and that will give me the info I need to get you the CEs. The last webinar I did, I had over 100 CEs, and it took me like 4 hours to do it. So hopefully it's a little bit easier. And give us feedback on this. And here's my disclaimer. These conversations does not represent my fire department. It does not represent what we do, what we embrace. These are just my ideas, and some of the ideas that I've come up with have originated from my organization, and I've also tried to take things I've learned outside of my fire department and to provide change. So it's a mixture of everything, but tonight I am not representing American Township. I am talking strictly as Jordan Hemker. I said I and we are students of the fire service, and we have learned from others. None of this stuff's original. This is all stuff that we've gone to trainings and learned. We learned from the guys on the fire department and from our own experiences. Also, I and we are always looking to learn and adapt to help better serve our residents. That is what we are here for as students of the craft. And I put this word in here, Pablo. We talked last night, the instructors. We ended up talking for like 2 hours, and I wasn't expecting it. And it was wonderful. And Pablo said the word passion. And I really think tonight you're going to see a lot of passion in this discussion with the instructors. And I got a feeling we're going to go a little bit longer than the 1 hour, which is totally fine. I think there's going to be a lot of cool nuggets and discussions in this presentation. One other thing I have for you guys is be you and train for your area. Take what we're talking about tonight and work for your run district. Not everybody runs New York City staffing. Not everyone runs American Township staffing. What you have tonight in this training, in this seminar, or whatever you want to call it, tweak it for what's going to work for your fire department, your response, your staffing, and your district. All right, do this for your area. And the last thing I have, I don't know if you guys can see this. You see a video?
Yeah.
All right, so I've been meaning to do this for a long time, and I'm going to ask a question after this, all right? Is there any sound? No sound.
I am familiar with the commercial. It's a funny commercial.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, right?
It is a good
All right.
commercial.
So basically, I don't know if there's sound or not, but the doctor walks in and says, look who got reinstated, right? If you are a patient and you go to your doctor, do you want a half-assed doctor? Absolutely not. Do you want a half-assed fire department? Absolutely not. So take this stuff serious. What you do matters. We're going to talk about search tonight. It's all about time. And if you're out there messing around, not masked up, not getting the line, not getting stuff done, you're taking that time away from them on the inside. So don't be that doctor in this commercial, right? Know your job and do your job, okay? All right, we now have 62 people on this thing. So, Sean, how do you want it to start this off? You want to go straight to the presentation?
Yeah, if you want to do that, I know everybody's got stuff to do, so we could just go right into it if that works out for you.
Yeah, man, sounds great. Let's go back to the shared screen here. And just let me know if you guys are all seeing this, all right?
Yeah.
All right, I got you on there now. I can see it.
Yeah, I got the search over survivable screen up.
Awesome.
Yeah, in here.
So Sean Duffy, and Sean, this is a part of your Build a Culture program, correct?
Yes and no. So Build Your Culture is the training company. We do have a lecture that we do that's based off of like professionalism versus minimalism type stuff. This is our search class that we do.
Okay.
So this is the first part of it. It's a mixture of a hands-on and lecture portion. So our students will come in and they'll get the lecture, and then we go out and we do all the hands-on and practice everything that we learned. So
wonderful. So Sean was really, really kind and kind of tweaked his entire program just for this setup right here that we're doing tonight. And then he's actually allowing us to put this towards the Schwartz content. So thank you for that, Sean. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to let you kind of talk about each slide. I know we have the notes and stuff, and you just let me know when you're ready to move on, okay?
yeah, absolutely. And, you know, if anybody's got questions or any of the other instructors, you know, feel free to add your stuff in there. So as you see, the class is entitled Searchable versus Survivable. Now, there's a lot of emphasis placed on terms that we use in the fire service to decide like what we're going to do, whether we're going to make this search or not. But this is more of a class that is based off of making your decisions backed with education, which is super important, you know, and not really listening to opinions, more as guiding your actions based off of what you know. You know, and unfortunately, some of that has to do with experience levels. So we'll talk about all that. So searchable, survivable, as we move on, just keep that in the back of your mind, that that's what this is a question that you're asking yourself, like, can I make this happen right now? So if you want to move on with the slides, Jordan, we can do that.
Okay.
So one of the biggest things that I tell everybody is that we all have contributing factors, right? But we need to understand what those are. Everyone's are different. So I'll open it up to the students if they want to put up some questions or anything. I don't know if you can see it in the shared screen, but I'd like to know what they consider to be some of their contributing factors, and we can kind of expand upon that.
So by contributing factors, are you talking about like really like what you bring to the table as far as experience? And
so exactly. So that's what I want, right? Because I say contributing factors, people consider that to be different. What I think contributing factors are things that either improve your performance or hinder your performance. So there's different things that I personally feel that we have in the fire service that either make or break us in the success realm. So just curious what other people may feel those are, and then we can talk about what I feel they are. So
I think first and foremost, well, actually, do you want me to take this to chat or just be vocal?
You can be vocal. Yeah, vocal's
okay.
fine. That's
so I think first and foremost, when you're talking about putting your life on the line and your brothers and sisters' lives on the line, knowing your limits, knowing what you don't know is critical, but and making sure that the guys and gals in your department know that. But I'll also have a willingness to learn. I mean, don't be afraid to jump in, but know your limits. Whether it's, you know, some of us guys if you're on a volunteer department, you're older, maybe you're not as in shape as you were back when you were in your 20s. You know, hump some tools or run a pump. You know, you just know your limitations, and you know, if you go outside of that, you're going to put yourself and others at risk.
Right, and I agree with you 100%. So thank you for that. How long do you have in the fire service?
About 2 years.
2 years. Hey, that's okay. That's all right. The reason I asked is because that hits a lot of what I feel are contributing factors as well. So there's three big things for me. Time, obviously. How long does it take you to get to the emergency scene, right? Mm-hmm. How long does it take you to formulate a plan and get into action, right? Stretch in line, throwing ladders, just formulating your 360, all of that. That is time. Unfortunately, the longer we go with that, the less of a positive outcome we're going to have, because that time doesn't belong to us, it belongs to them. So when we're sitting in the front yard and we're messing around because we didn't train on how to mask up or throw ladders or stretch line properly, right, that all adds time into when we can get into action. So kind of touching a little bit else on what you said is the knowledge part, right? Do you truly understand what it is you're being asked to do? Have you learned from past fires? Have you even been to an incident that's requiring you to do what you're doing right now? Are you current and up to date on best practices, or is you just kind of back into that minimalist mindset of, well, I went through the fire academy and their training is supposed to be what I operate off of? And then obviously the third one is your ability, right? So that strikes on like your physical fitness, what you can accomplish with the staffing levels, because everybody's staffing levels are different. And overall, like, what is your level of experience, right? I can't expect you to make a positive assessment on something if maybe this is your first fire, or you've never really been to a fire that's required you to go into search and rescue mode. So we like to hit on all that because, you never know when these calls are going to happen. So those for me are contributing factors. Any of the instructors have any other contributing factors that they think important?
Real quick, Sean. So contributing factors. A lot of people always talk about, and excuse me as I'm looking down, just writing notes or not, so I don't forget. Right. A lot of people want to talk about time of day. Is the patient or the victim a VIP? Is it a kid? Is it a homeless guy? Those types of things that will contribute to the response of how you're going to fight this fire. And I just go out there and I'm going to put it out there for people to just ask themselves, why? I don't differentiate on how I fight fire. I don't differentiate on how I perform my EMS duties. It could legitimately be the president of the United States, or it could be a homeless dude. I'm not going to let either one of them die. So I always go back to sports analogies. The greatest of all times. The Michael Jordans of the world, the Peyton Mannings of the world, the Derek Jeters of the world will probably scrimmage you, and during a scrimmage, you'll never know that it's a scrimmage. They're always going to play to win. So just for me, I don't. The only and I agree with Sean wholeheartedly. The only thing that changes is your time of response. Like if you have a 2-minute response as opposed to a 20-minute response, what you're going to do on the fire ground is going to change. But as far as like how I'm going to attack the fire based on whether it's a vacant house, quote unquote, whether it's a kid entrapped, whether it's a 90-year-old entrapped, I'm still going to be balls to the wall, essentially. So fighting the fire how I know how to fight fire. So that's just my thinking, my 2 cents on contributing factors there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What about John and Chris? You guys got anything to add?
Physical fitness, I think, is a big contributing factor. I personally am trying to train for smoke divers, so I'm trying to train for a higher caliber of level of fitness training. So for me, it's different compared to everyone else, but I still believe that our job is physically demanding. Just like in the military, when they go out and go to serve and protect our country, these guys are not just lazy asses. They're not just sitting on their couches staring at a TV set all day. They're out there, training their butts off. They're out there becoming physically fit, adapting their bodies to an environment that they're not used to. And I think that plays a huge contributing factor, especially for us, because we're constantly in environments that play a major toll on our bodies. And we just hired 5 new people in our organization. 2 of them are on 12-hour shifts. One of them right now is rotating through my house at this point, and he's an exceptional employee so far. He's doing very well. One of the things that he lacks is physical fitness, and being able to train his mindset when he gets into that, what I call the red level. I categorize my levels between green, yellow, red, and black. Black meaning that you have lost pretty much all subconscious and you're not thinking clearly. And your heart rate is elevated way above 200. Your red zone target is usually anywhere between 100 and 130 beats a minute to 180 beats a minute. But you're still within that subconscious mind frame, but your body's just being physically exerted and it's taking a huge demand on your performance. And that's where being physically fit, being able to train and just even do it doesn't have to be an elaborate training or exercise. It could be simply just going out in full gear, throwing ladders, full gear forcing doors, full gear pulling lines, and just getting your body used to that. Especially down here in Florida. Florida, I mean, it's summer all year round. Everyone knows that, so it can, even during the summertime, it can get up to 100 degrees. And for us, that's a different ball game because we have to adapt our bodies to that. It definitely puts a toll on you. So I think when it goes to contributing factors, physical fitness is definitely one of those key aspects that we need to be aware of.
Awesome. What about you, John?
I'm going to touch on a couple factors. Chris touched on that, and that's a tactical resiliency. If anybody picked up that book from Rick George and the two other guys, exactly what he's spot on regarding what's going on with that. I want to talk about time, but two other things you talked about was knowledge and experience. You can't change the knowledge and experience when you're riding to the run, to the call, but that's done ahead of time. The time aspect, and I'm gonna come at it from an officer's perspective. If it's a 2-minute response, what are you looking for? What's your size up factors? Pablo touched on it too. Looking at like what's your building, what are you going to, what's your occupancy, knowing what you're going to, and running the Rolodex in your head of how we're going to respond and what we're going to do at that incident will set us in motion for where our potential victims are, especially for a structure fire of, hey, time of day, time of night, where are we going, and where are we most likely going to find our victims. And later on, we're going to talk about numbers about where we're going to find them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you said that, because that plays a role. Like, are you going to this run in your first due, maybe your second or third due? Where is this at? And how well do you know those areas in relation to yours?
Absolutely. Yeah, those are the contributing factors right there that are big, not necessarily, and just to clarify, not necessarily the hey guys, we got to be on our game today because it's a pediatric. I'm going to search no matter if it's a pediatric or if it's a 90-year-old, so absolutely. Thank you, John.
But I want to touch on that as well. Me, for more of a size up aspect for engine or truck, I'm looking at different techniques. I'll throw this out there. Using Google Street or Google Earth. I'm on a truck company. I'm a truck company captain. So I want to know if I got wires in the front of the building. If I got wires in the front of the building, what am I going to do? We're going to do ground ladders. Where are we setting up? If I'm able to pull that information up as we're responding in, it gives me a better size up factor of what building I have, what type of building, flat roof, pitch roof, fire escape locations, all sort of stuff that I'm able to yell out to the guys in the back as we're going down the road and pulling up. 2 minutes is a lot different than a 5-minute response. In my city, we're 3.2 square miles, and we can be on scene in 4 minutes anywhere in our city.
That's great. Yeah. So what happens when you go outside of your city? What do your response times look like that? Mutual aid, things like that.
Maybe 5 to 10. It gives me a little more time to dive into. I call it research. I research the building if I don't know it. Again, I love Google. I use my phone. We pull it up on the tablets in the apparatus that we now have.
Sure.
Just to see what we've got. If I know I'm going to the roof, I pull up Google Earth. I want to see what's up there. Air and light shafts. I want to see if I've got if they got photoelectric rays, PV.
Right. So it sounds like it sounds like everyone can pretty much agree that knowledge, right, is a huge one, and time, right? What is your dispatch time and everything else like that? So, Jordan, do you have anything to add before we move on to the next slide?
I think it's culture, man. What's the culture of your organization? Chris talked about working out and doing these little drills to make yourself better, both physically and mentally. Man, if your culture don't embrace that, if it's Nick Martin always says, if you're a turd in the firehouse, you're probably a turd on the fireground. That's the way it rolls. You don't just snap a finger and you're a badass fireman, and your job. You have to put the time and the work into it. Because for me speaking personally, we go to an EMS call every day. I go to a nursing home every day. I'm really good at that. But the fires, a search, it's just not something I do all the time. That's a skill you have to keep up on. It's one of those things where you might lose those fine motor skills, those little things. You're not keeping up with culture, man. I think culture influences so much when it comes to training and skills on the fire ground.
Oh, it sure does, because I don't know, one of my biggest pet peeves is the target solutions, right? Like I hate those things. I understand that it's got a time and place, but it's not meant to replace putting your hands on tools or getting out there in your gear and doing this stuff, right? And a lot of people say, I did my training for the day. Sometimes you log in and it looks like, oh, hey, I have all these checks on. It's like, well, when did I do physical fitness? I've only been here for an hour, but I've got 2 hours of physical fitness logged in already. So it's not a good accurate of assessment. Also team building, right? Like you really want to make sure that you got team building. And that's where that comes in, getting outside, getting in there, running through these drills. I might've been off on my Kelly day or something. You guys might've caught a job and, something crazy could have happened. I want to know about that. I want to go out there and train on that so that if I get that position, then I'd be like, you know what? I've been here before in some way, right? Like I've trained on this exact thing. Granted, every fire scene is different, but at least it sets you up for success instead of failure. So that's huge. But
Yep. All right. Moving on.
Yep. Moving on. So you got the next one up there, Jordan. It should be knowledge.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Nope. Next one.
Next one. Moving on.
Yep. Moving on. All right. So knowledge objectives, right? This is huge for me. This is pretty much what we're going to look at, right? We want to size up our search effort when we get there because our whole intent is to target our search, right? We will search everything at some point in this fire, but we have to identify what gets priority right now. And we don't have that much time to do that. So that's where we get to target our search, whether it be a VES or whatever kind of search tactic that you employ to get that done. We need to have that mindset of saying, if I don't do this right now, I'm not going to be able to, because once that spot or once that space is lost, it's lost. So is everyone else in there, right? So getting on that quick and understanding why is it that you feel that way? What is it about that particular space that triggered in your mind that that's where I need to go first? Improving efficiency, that's where your training comes in, doing the sets and reps. What we do, we have a dangerous job, and the point of the whole thing is if we're not improving, we're not effective, right? I could do this search the same way I did it, 5 years ago, but things have changed, layouts of buildings may have changed, all that kind of stuff. And then understanding our data, UL and Firefighter Rescue Survey, like they give us tremendous amount of information to go through. And we really need to understand what that means for us on the fire ground. So I think the biggest thing is when we show up, we want to be able to use facts to guide our decisions and not fear. So identify your searchable space on that 360 when you show up. Anyone else?
No, man, I think that's all solid points to make. And I think the other thing is knowing your run district. I think that makes a huge point. Knowing that I'm going to, for me, say I go to what we call it the village of my homes are going to be, that's an older village. Building construction is different compared to going to Laurel Oaks, which is a 2000s on up neighborhood. My mindset might be a little bit different, still the same, but my method of execution might be a little faster, different, things along those points. Or I'm going up to my station 2, which is a little more ghetto-ish, not scary, but it's a little rougher neighborhood where I might be thinking of different styles of search where people might be hiding at and those types of things. So I think knowing your run district is
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a huge point. And just real quick, just to emphasize what Sean said, we should never make ever. It doesn't matter whether you work for a small rural department or a large metro department. We should never ever make tactical decisions based off of fear. Knowledge gives you your tactical decisions. Never fear. If you're doing any type of work off of fear, then you need to get back to school a little bit.
John?
District familiarization is key. Knowing what's going on in your area, your primary and your secondary, knowing street construction issues, building construction issues. There's many a time that we'll be driving down the road and I'll have my chauffeur stop. We'll get out and meet up with a GC that's working on a house and ask, hey, what are you doing? What renovations? We always heard about that. Renovations kill firefighters because it creates void spaces that we don't usually know about from that building. It may be a type 1, I'll go with the type 5 or a type 3, and then now they're adding things or changing things.
Yeah. Then John, you run into building code updates. You might run into a sprinkler system that just got upgraded. You never knew there was a sprinkler system in that building until they did the update, or a standpipe system or whatever.
You're absolutely right on that, Jordan. And just getting out there and knowing your district and knowing forcible entry issues. Again, truck company stuff for me. We have rear access issues. We have buildings that are right next to each other and that we have gates and locks. And how do we get in? So play that how-to game a lot in your district of what task you want to do and how you get there and get it done is a great game that we play on the truck all the time.
Absolutely. One of the guys that's watching, he said situational awareness is good, and I agree with that 100%. You got to know what's going on, and I think situational awareness is also expecting what might happen 10 minutes, 20 minutes down the road of your fire, for sure.
Yeah,
that comes with knowledge and experience, though.
Yeah.
You're not the guy fresh out of rookie school is not going to understand what's coming down the line in 10, 15 minutes on a wood frame structure that's been burning for 15, 20 minutes already. And what are we going to do? What's our change? That's more of the officer in your man of fighting those fires.
I got one thing. Can I throw one thing in here real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So understanding your response district, also understanding your mutual aid district. I don't know about you guys, but we're at here, we rely very heavily on mutual aid. Back when I first joined, I'm volunteer in New Jersey, back when I first joined 20-some years ago, if you called mutual aid to your town, you guys were fuck-ups that you had to call a mutual aid company to your town for a house fire. But now it's got to the point where as soon as the neighboring town is dispatched for a fire, all these other towns, including my town, are all kind of gearing up because you know you're going. So you have to know how to, not only your response district, you have to understand their response district. And the biggest thing that you have to realize too is making sure that those companies know how to operate when they come to work with you. So, I'm sure that everybody has neighboring departments that you guys may go mutual aid to. I don't know John, but I know his department, Passaic, always goes to Patterson. So I'm sure, John, how does that work with you guys? Are going to Patterson and Patterson coming to you guys? Is that something you relate to as far as mutual aid? I mean, Passaic may do one thing, Patterson does another thing. But as far as your truck companies, and the point that I'm trying to get is you should come up with a common denominator between whether it's engine or truck, that to know that your engine companies are doing this and their truck companies are doing that, and vice versa. So it's a happy marriage when you guys are operating. Is that something that you can relate to, John?
Absolutely. And it starts with the run card, I would say, knowing that my ladder truck goes mutual aid to the city of Patterson. My ladder truck goes mutual aid to Clifton. But when we are calling for mutual aid, because we're a smaller city, I know we're going to get potentially right now, we're getting a 1-in-1 from the city of Patterson, and we're going to get an engine from Clifton. And just knowing what their roles are and what we're going to do. A lot of times we're going to go backfill a station, and if it's a large enough fire in Patterson, we're going right to work. We've had lately, our guys have been fairly busy at work, and it's interesting. The new that we're in with COVID, we have a lot of more people in buildings, and it's about that size up feature. We have family members now with more family in their physical home because of this. So now you have to do a better accountability. It's just something that's out there and that we're going to start seeing potentially with the aftermath of this virus.
Yeah, I think that's a good point there, John. Everything's kind of changed for us at this point. So, you almost have to assume in search specific, we almost have to assume at this point that if we're able to, we're making the search. Someone's probably in that house, with these quarantines and things like that. So this is something that I think that if you haven't had the opportunity to do very much, you're probably going to find yourself doing a lot more than you thought at this time in our fire service. So.
All right, ready to move on?
Yep, let's do it.
All
right, so the next one here, somebody, I don't care who, one of the students, somebody with some experience or maybe not a whole lot of experience, doesn't matter. Unmute your mic and give me a size up on this picture.
Not all at once.
All right.
I
You
got
do
it.
it?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd be arriving. I would say I got a single-family wood frame private dwelling. I got heavy fire shown from the A and the B side. That'd be my standard size up. I'd also say that it appears that we have a handicap ramp going on the Bravo side of the building as well.
Awesome. So what does that tell you about this particular incident?
We might have a person inside that's not ambulatory.
Right. Or they may not be ambulatory, or they may not move all that well, right? And what are some things that we're always taught, like when we do size up, right? Oh, there's no cars in the driveway, the grass is kept up, like, you know, all that good stuff. But unfortunately, going back to the previous point, you can't really use those anymore, right? There's so many factors that go into what's happening, you know. Obviously, if this person with the handicap ramp can't drive, but whoever else lives there to assist with them had to go run errands to get that medication or whatever, yeah, it's going to look like no one's home. That doesn't mean they're not in there, right? So gathering this quick information on your 360 for your search size up is imperative. We have to do that, and we have to get those little clues. So good job about catching that. I intentionally picked this picture for that reason, because I was trying to see who would catch that, especially on that 360. I personally feel there's a lot of searchable space in this particular building. And, you know, that goes back to waiting on your resources to get there. What are you going to do? What is your first due unit arriving in? Is it an ambulance? Is it a truck company? Is it an engine? You know, or is it the battalion chief's vehicle? What is it? And is that going to hinder you from doing your search? All those things add up. So if anybody else has anything to add on that picture, please do so. I'd be curious to see what any other considerations would be.
The layout of the inside of the building, knowing your neighborhoods and your layouts of, you know, you go in that front door, you may have stairs straight ahead of you. You're probably going to have a room to your right. You know, kitchen's probably going to be to the rear. Just knowing the layout of those buildings in that neighborhood will facilitate your search, whether you're going to try VES or you're going to actually get that line in between the fire and the victim's potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely. Dane Fitzgerald. Yeah, absolutely, right? So, you know, if you look up on the roof, it looks like there might be a little bit of snow up on there. He says could possibly be a basement fire, right? That's where knowing a lot of stuff comes in, right? Knowing your fire behavior, your flow path, your building construction, all of it. It's all relevant, not to just fire attack, but to us as searchers, right? We need to take every bit of that into account, because if we just start popping windows and taking doors and we're just diving in, that might not be the most effective thing. You know, we might be making it worse for them and really bad for us too. So you just got to kind of slow it down and not get so focused on the fire, and take that big picture in it and really focus our efforts where we can do the greatest good. John, Pablo, anybody got anything else to add?
No, brother, you guys hit that. You guys hit your points pretty well. Good catch on the handicap ramp there. That's something that people won't. A lot of people don't do. Their tunnel vision on that fire. You know, we go back to obviously, you know, the basics of reading smoke, which is, you know, to quote Chief Lassie, obviously, you know, don't be a moth to that flame. Don't look at that flame. You know, what is the smoke telling you? Well, what's the building telling you? Obviously, so good catch on that handicap ramp.
Just
Yeah,
to size up
absolutely.
the exterior of the building too. You see some low hanging wires. You do see a chain link fence around the property. So things to be aware of just before you even get to the structure.
Bingo, right? Because that all makes a huge difference for us, right? We're all amped up. We're ready to go. We want to get in there. We want to kick ass and do a great job. And of course, we all want to be the first one to find someone and pull them out, right? That's what we're there for. We're firemen, right? However, if we don't take that moment to pace ourselves and keep an eye on what's going on around us, we're not going to do anybody any good if we get hurt, because now we need to be rescued, right? So
Absolutely.
I don't
that's
know
a
if you
good point.
guys.
I appreciate that.
I don't know if you guys can see in the picture, but towards the bottom by the fence is the 1 3/4 hand line.
Yeah.
Positioning of your engine, you got that chain link fence. That's a big deal. You know, one of the guys in the chat said, judging by the picture, it's a moment of time, right? You know, we don't know the
Absolutely.
whole story or anything. We're just talking about what we see here. Water supply. Am I going to set up for the draft? Am I going to set up for a relay pump? There's so many things in these situations. You're making decisions in an instant, you know, and
Yep.
you have to absorb the entire scene. It looks like a wire coming across the top. You know, those are things that factor into your position, what plan A, B, and C for your fire.
So
Yep,
just
we do.
Jordan, just to touch on what you said regarding the fence and that line, that's perfect. Engine pulled past. Leave room for the truck, even though it's 1.5 stories. You never know what you're going to have to do, whether you might have to vent or whatever else. The other issue is how many people have just thought about throwing that line over the fence, right?
Right.
Why make the long stretch around? You can go on a diagonal. Just little things over time, and that comes with the experience of running calls and seeing what the senior guys are doing and how they're instructing.
Absolutely.
Just-
Go ahead.
Excuse me. Just for clarification, and everybody in this class, we have all walks of life in the fire service, from more densely populated areas to rural. You may not run a ladder company, but you need to think ladder company function. That was one thing that Pablo and I talked about for a while. You might respond with 2 engines and a tanker to this fire. You still need to think about these things down the line of your fire scene. So
Yeah. So if I may there real quick, Jordan, real quick.
West Ohio, there's only a few places that run a ladder truck, and we don't run dedicated companies in our area. Our staffing's kind of dynamic, and we respond with more vehicles, and then we basically company up and get on the scene. So just for that clarification.
Absolutely. Yeah, if I may real quick on that, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more on that. There's always a debate, especially in not large metro areas, you know, like, a truck company, we don't have high rises, we don't have this, we don't need a truck company, we're an engine dominated department or whatnot. I work for an engine dominated department. Having said that, so as our apparatus arrive on scene, first, just the way that we fall, our first 2 engines is going to be suppression, our second 2 engines is going to be water supply, our third 2 engines is going to be truck company operations. So if you're listening to me right now and you work for one of these departments where you are an engine dominated department, I'm going to tell you right now, you have truck companies in every battalion and every district coming to you. It is the third 2 engine. If you're doing anything other than putting water on the fire, you're doing truck work. If you're searching, you're doing truck work. You're forcing entry, you're doing truck work. You're pulling ceiling, you're doing truck work. So just keep that in mind for all the guys that say, "Oh, we don't need truck company operations. We don't need trucks. We don't need this." Truck work is a skill. It is not a truck. It's a skill. And that picture right there for that particular house, you could debate how to fight that fire 7 ways from Sunday. You could go interior, transitional, this, fog this, gallons per minute, whatever. You could debate that 7 ways from Sunday. One thing you cannot debate from a truck company standpoint, from an ambulance suppression standpoint, is there is searchable space there. You need to get in there and search that house. That is, words matter and size ups matter. And that right there is not a fully involved house. We need to start getting into that mindset of understanding the differences between heavily involved, fully involved, because words matter to the incoming crews, to that third due truck company or third due engine, to that first due ambulance that's going to do a search. So words matter, right?
Absolutely.
You said that perfect, Pablo, and we're going to touch on that a little bit more. And I absolutely love this discussion, because that's kind of what we're here for, getting people's minds rolling, and trying to see what the best tactical decision is to make. So as we move on from here, we're going to be doing more and more of these, so we'll add some more, but I don't want to take up everyone's time, so we'll just keep it moving. Jordan, we'll go to the next 2. Unless anybody has something to add real quick that they didn't get a chance to. Yep, you good, Jordan?
Yes, we're good.
All right. So here we have fatal facts, right? So keep in mind, as we go on through this, these statistics have recently changed. I have just not updated them yet. So if you see something that's different, I understand that it is, and it will be changed. But for the most part, they're right in the ballpark. So when we look at that, over 60% of our fatalities are between 2000 and 0800. That's important for me to know, especially when it comes to searching, because when our fires come in, that's one of those huge things, right? Time of day. We talked about that earlier.
And then putting that in, how many fires have you had at that particular time of day? You know, when you've done that, how many times have you searched? Have you found somebody? Maybe you haven't. You know, all those things have to come into account. But our peak hours are from 3 to 5, because that's when people are in their deepest sleep, right? And that is something that I think we aren't doing a good enough job of addressing, is paying attention to our times. You know, we get a daytime fire and we're like, oh, it's probably during the day. Well, that's fine unless somebody works shift work, right? Like we all do, and you take a nap during the day, right? And all those things add up to there. But I found it interesting to think that according to the U.S. Fire Administration, the leading factor in fire fatalities is because we are sleeping, right? Now, whether that be lack of early warning or things like that, who knows? But, you know, 48%, that's a significant number to be occurring between, you know, 11 o'clock and 7 a.m., I think. So you want to go to the next slide there, Jordan?
Yeah, if you could, Sean, can you write down in the chats all of those websites that people can go and go to, like Firefighter Rescue Survey and the U.S. Fire Administration?
Yeah,
absolutely. In the chat, so people can copy and paste them. The biggest thing here, guys, I just want to put, I don't expect firemen to memorize numbers, but I expect you to memorize that people are creatures of habit, you know, and think about how you enter your house all the time. You need to think like that when you're going to someone's house. The front door may not always be the best door. That's not the door they always use. Maybe they use the side door or the back sliding door. If that homeowner is out in the front yard, ask them which door they frequently use, and that's probably the best place for your line to go. Think about an EMS call. You go inside, you go to the house, can't open the front door because there's a couch behind it. You know, those types of things. So really paying attention. EMS calls is the best surveillance you can have on your run district. And I know firemen, EMS, oh my gosh, but man, you are learning so much about your area if you just stop and open your eyes and kind of expand your thought process just a little bit. That's just my little blurb on that.
No, that's good, Jordan, because there's one thing that I will touch on that, you know, and this is actually a completely different class, right? And I don't teach it. If you want it, contact Ryan Pennington. He's great. But when you talk about going in these houses and you're talking about exits and where people normally are, that is a key factor when we're talking about hoarding situations, right? Knowing where these people are, because they're not going to be where they normally would be in a home that's not cluttered, right? Typically, these time of days, if that's what we're thinking in our mind, you know, oh well, I read it that this time of day they're statistically most likely to be in the bedroom. That's great, but this is a hoarding house, and their bedroom's probably packed full of stuff. So think about that. There's clues that key us into that this is a hoarding situation, and that we might have to actually change up our search tactics to locate that victim. And one of the best ways to do that is actually stay on those trails. You know, that will lead you to them because that's how they move around their own house. So I just want to throw that in there for just a little thing to think about when you're doing your size ups as well.
Yeah, the heavy, talking about the heavy content, you're going to find them in the paths. You're not going to find them on the hoard itself or the heavy content. So EMS runs are going to be your best bet of knowing that they sleep in the lounge chair in the living room and they're not in the bedroom because the bedroom's now packed, you know?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Hey, before we move on, actually, it's one of my battalion chiefs that I work with. He said that we have had to retrain our minds during, we have retrained our minds during this pandemic, kids and parents home during the day and sleeping till 10 to 11 a.m. Man, that's spot on. That's really changed our whole anticipation of where people are at.
And it does, and that's why I wanted to bring attention to that. Is these numbers are great and these statistics are, but as we know, there's nothing definite on the fire ground, especially.
Sean, we're losing you, bud.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, the reception here is terrible. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is there's nothing definite on the fire ground, right? And that's including where we're going to find our victims.
Right.
So understanding that, you know, if we trick ourselves and we take these numbers at face value and say, yep, this is where they're going to be because the numbers say so, that may not be the case. So this This isn't to say this is where you must do your things, or this is where you will find victims. This is just to tell you, like, hey, these might be things you want to think about, whether it be time of day or percentage of people found in these areas. Especially when you're trying to identify where your entrance points are going to be for this search. So don't take any of this after the class and say, well, Sean said 60% of the time they're in their bedrooms or whatever, because, the facts that we get, they're only there because somebody filled out a survey, right? They had a rescue or something like that. Maybe they made a grab and it was fatal, but they took the time to fill out that survey. And right now there's only 1,172 of those surveys filled out. Well, when we look at, on average, we have 3,000 fire fatalities a year. That's about half that are being reported. So we can only go off of those numbers. And right now, I looked this morning, there's 899 civilian fire deaths. So what does that mean for us, right? The numbers that we're currently seeing are based off of the last 500 surveys that were filled out. So there's still a couple hundred surveys that we're missing to get those numbers. So just stay cognizant of that as we move on, right, and understand that.
All right, I'm gonna move on after, from the statistics, so we can get into the meat and potatoes of this.
Yes, let's do it. All right, so here's something. Pablo touched on this, right? We have to be careful what we say because our words have meaning. Every single one of those things up there, depending on who you ask, can mean the same thing, right? But yet here we are in the fire service and we argue on what it means. Instead, if we just said that we're sizing up our search, right? Everybody knows what that means. We're all on the same page there. If I ask somebody in this chat, what is survivability profiling? And I ask somebody else, I will get a different answer, right? Because usually those words are what it means to that person. So I'm not saying not to use them. I'm just saying that if you are going to use them, make sure that you personally know what it means to you and that everyone else does too. Because if you're not, then you're running into that fine line of, miscommunication. If I said, why didn't we search this? And you said survivability profiling, my first question is going to be, well, what does that mean? Right? If you tell me, well, I'm not able to go into that space, then I'm going to say, well, to me, that means that you were sizing up your search, right? You made it, whatever it was, you made that distinct decision that I can't make this happen right now. I have to go to a different spot that I can, because that spot's I'm not able to operate in. If I'm not able to operate in that spot, chances of them being alive are probably slim, right? So just caution yourselves on what you choose to use and basing your actions off of those words as well. Anybody have anything to add on that?
I took a good officers class in Fort Lauderdale Fire Expo last year. I can't remember his name. I'm horrible with names. I'm great with faces though. But one of the battalion chiefs of Fort Lauderdale, his terminology, which I'm going to start adapting for myself, is getting away from saying defensive attack over the radio. He doesn't use that. It's either interior or exterior attack. And I think that plays a major factor, especially in my part of Florida. It seems like everyone that comes onto the scene and says, we're going into defensive mode, everyone's guard kind of gets let down. And really, they're not seeing the big picture yet once they get on scene and they realize, oh, well, it's just a heavy amount of fire in the front part of the building. And they decided to go defensive, but as soon as they knock that down, then they're going to finish up and go interior. So that's why he likes using, battalion one's on scene. I've got heavily involved alpha side of the structure. We're going to exterior attack. And then that's a cue and clue saying that, okay, they're going exterior attack first, and now they're going to transition to interior attack once they get that main body fire down. And I think that plays into that terminology aspect of still keeping that heightened sense of awareness for crews as they're rolling into the scene and not totally getting laxed as of yet once they hear defense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore, because I know that me personally, I've gone to fires where they say we're defensive, fully involved, and in your mind you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna sit outside, right? I'm just gonna spray water on a bunch of stuff. And then you show up and you're like, whoa, this is not fully involved, and there's a ton of searchable space, and now everyone's frantic trying to figure out what happened. So that initial report sets the stage for everybody to respond, no doubt about it.
So, Chris, I want to touch on exactly what you said. The word transition. Transitional attack has been beaten up for the past 3 to 5 years. It's okay that we can knock the fire back so we can gain entry to get there. We have to be able to get in to hit the searchable or survivable spaces, but we have to do it so we can possibly get in there. People don't like using the word transitional. That's why I would say, hey, we're going to do a transitional attack. Everybody knows that means we're going in the second we knock this thing down, because we got to get inside. We got to check the spaces that are there. And again, what I wrote in the chat room, primary search is a rapid, thorough search. It's not clear till it's searched. And that's, saying exterior attack. Okay, that's cool, because we're going to do an exterior attack. I've gotten so scared of that word transitional, and it's but it's an actual mode of it, because it's an attack to knock down, to get inside, to do what we got to do, to make it our availability to get
Absolutely,
in.
John. Yeah, that's
you're absolutely
huge.
right.
It's not clear until we say it clear, and I know that's a cliche, but gosh, if we listen to the reports from the exterior from people, how many times do we see that they were told not that they weren't in there, and we go and make a search because that's what we're there to do, and we find victims, right? So yeah, it's definitely something that we got to be mindful of, what we choose to listen to on the reports. All right, go to the next one, Jordan.
Okay.
All right, observe.
Hey, Sean. Can you guys hear Sean?
No.
No.
How's it now?
Hey, what kind of internet you got? Is that Audi brand?
It came from a Cracker Jack box, bro.
That's that Cricket Wireless, bro.
Oh man.
Buddy, you work for the city of Venice. You could afford something else, bro.
Yeah, it's that junky FiDos is what it is. All right, can you guys hear me better now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so this observable conditions from the exterior, this is a Chief Isaacson thing, and it makes so much sense. What does this mean to any of you guys, right? When you show up and you see this and you observe it, right? Is this what's going to base your actions for the entire fire, or is that just a snapshot in time, right? To me, when we observe something from the exterior, that's I call it a 1D view, right? You're looking at something from the outside, but what we have on the outside may not actually be what's occurring on the inside, right? So the only way to really truly know what the interior is like is to go inside, right? So that gives you your 3D view. So I always tell everybody, if you give me the chance to look in like a 1-dimension or a 3-dimension, I'm going to choose a 3-dimension. So once you break that plane of the box, which is essentially the house, 4 walls, you go in and you start forming walls and things like that. There's furniture in the way. So the layout of that structure is now modified. So I take a view like this and I go, wow, that looks like a heavy volume of fire. Sure, it looks like a heavy volume of fire. It doesn't mean that it is, right? We talk about closed doors and all those other things that mean something to our victims and their survivable rates. When you take a snapshot like one that's in this picture and you choose to write it off, we're truly missing the mark there, right? So we want to make sure that we base our actions on a core foundation of knowledge that we have that's going to guide us in the right areas, because let's just face it, none of us here are smart enough to risk our life or anyone else's life based off our opinions, right? We need to know the facts. And, unfortunately, things like this, you got to step that up a little bit and make an effort to find out what those facts are.
Yeah, absolutely. And just real quick to touch on that goes, everything ties together. That goes back on making decisions based off of fear. Whether you make a decision based off of adrenaline, that's bad. And if you make a decision based off of fear, that's bad. We need to make decisions based off of tactical knowledge.
That's right. Yeah, I agree. Because, right, we talked about it. Everything's searchable at some point, isn't it?
Right. Absolutely, bro.
So we need to be intelligently aggressive, right? We don't want to just be acting off pure emotion. All right. So,
Next one.
yep. Try and keep it moving for everybody.
Yep.
Size up considerations. This is a big one for me, right? If you guys notice, bag the fire. Some people know what that means. Some people don't. So when you're looking at your fire, you need to know where it's been, where it's at, and where you project it to go. That's your bag the fire, right? So if we take those few seconds, we're going to save a ton of time, right? And really, the whole reason why we want to bag the fire is we need to understand if we choose to make our search from the front door and we hug like every square corner of this house, we're doing a tremendous disservice, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not operating as effectively as we could for them, and it wastes valuable time, right? We're just, we need to understand that today in our modern fire service, fire growth is measured in seconds, not minutes. That stuff is quick, whatever we put in our house, all that stuff. So you really don't have time to be going through these spaces all like lackadaisically, like, and like slow. You got to move with a purpose. You got to identify that quick, and you got to get in there and get it done. Because if you don't, I'll show you the slide of what this house looks like if you chose not to. But one big thing that we look at is, I'm not a big blue card fan. Okay, so I apologize if I offend anybody with this. I do like the term can report. Okay, I think that is huge, especially when it comes to diving in windows or making searches and stuff, because we need to know our conditions. We need to know what those conditions mean, because those guide our actions. And then once we're inside doing stuff, we need to know what our needs are. So if we decide to look in that window there where that AC unit is, and we dive in there, we might want to consider what? Our need might be suppression. We might need water to support our search effort, right? All these things need to come into play when we're doing this, and we need to be quick. Right? And that only comes from proper training and knowledge and implementing these things. Get it? We don't go to a lot of fires. Some of us do, some of us don't. But that doesn't mean we can't train, and we can't train our minds to be thinking about this stuff. John, Pablo, Chris, Jordan?
No, man. I'm with you. I like blue card. I like blue card's terminology on like a can report, and I think it keeps the fire ground a little more organized, especially for my situation with our staffing. It's just it's trying to get other organizations to hop on board. We talked about terminology. Sean is struggling tonight, man.
No, I just turned my camera off. That's all.
Yeah, we heard it.
We talked about terminology and mutual aid coming in the city or coming into your run district, or you're going to them. They might have a totally different vocabulary than what we do, and you got to find that happy medium of what they're talking about and what you're talking about. And it's it all comes back to training and just having an adult conversation with people.
I think you're right. It comes down to training, comes down to cross training, going and with your mutual aid. The other aspect is knowing what your incident commanders are going to be asking for from your officers. The IC is going to give you, hey, give me a can report. All right. So your officers should understand what that is, right? Because we all have to be on that same level playing field. We don't use blue card on the East Coast, at least in my city. We don't use blue card. We use, the NIMS, National Incident Management, from the ICS, all that other crazy stuff, the alphabet soup. But there's certain acronyms that are out there that are standard to the fire service. CAN is probably one that made it from the West Coast to the East. Yeah. And everybody's grabbing it, besides the 2.5 gallons of pressurized water.
And I think the can report keeps it simple, and it's just easy to remember in your mind. But the biggest thing, though, only one person in that group is talking on the radio. Not every. That's the one thing I think in my fire service we're bad at, is if you have groups or specific functions working inside, and we say interior from command, And then you've got every functioning group inside that's interior, you know, they're doing different jobs, a search, fire, attack, overhaul, whatever it might be. You know, you need to organize who you want to talk on the radio. Typically it's the lieutenant that's in there or the next most senior guy of that group on the radio, but not everybody's on the radio at once. That stuff, I know it drives a lot of us crazy.
Absolutely.
Well, that's how you miss a Mayday, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, that's the biggest thing is, okay, we know what our jobs are. We're going to get in, and you should really only be talking on the radio when you need something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we tend to take up a lot of radio traffic with stuff that means nothing, like saying ums and ahs and like at this time and all this stuff that we say that we don't really
Be
need
advised.
to be saying. So
What's
be
my
advised,
assignment?
yeah.
2 minutes
exactly.
out. What's my assignment? I don't know, man. What are you second, third, fourth through, fifth through, 10th through? Are you, you know, I don't know.
Yeah,
I've literally heard people on tankers ask, "Hey, what's my assignment?" Bro, you're on a tanker. What do you think your assignment is? You know, so.
Yeah, water supply. So, all right, let's we'll keep it moving so we don't get too far off track.
Just to clarify, a CAN report is conditions, actions, needs. That's what that stands for.
Yeah, Jordan, if you see any questions, like they're not popping up for me, so I keep trying to scroll back. So if you see anything that I need to address, please let me know so I don't get too far ahead of myself.
Yep, and yeah, Chris. Chris, talk about clues real quick.
Yeah, well, since Joey's not here, I'll try to speak on behalf of him. But Joey is my mentor. He's taken me under his wing now for the past 4 years, and I'm truly humble and blessed. And I've been able to also kind of fall under the wing of Andy too a little bit. He's been throwing me some information here that's been awesome because I've been trying to develop a TIC class on my own. Joey's trying to take more of the back seat now as he's reaching toward the latter part of his career and just kind of wants to settle down a little bit. So Joey's got a great acronym that I use myself. Clues: condition, location, utilities, exposures, and survivable spaces. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. It beats the Cole as well, and all those other progress report acronyms that are in that massive tactics book that I had to read for my officer's exam as of late. But yeah, if you're ever able to take Joey's class, it's definitely a phenomenal one. I won't dive too much into it, but yeah, it makes things easier, and it just makes your thought process go a little bit quicker, especially when you're rolling up to something like that in that picture right there.
But Joe uses clues for thermal imaging. It's another great acronym for size up too. But again, doing the Cole Twas Wells, the 15-point size up for command is different than what you're going to be looking at as a company officer rolling up. But again, Joey's clues is great for using it for thermal imaging and where things are going. But that's great that you're working with him. Joey's another good friend of mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Chris, can you type in the chats what clues the acronym stands for?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. And we're just gonna keep chugging along here, guys.
Also, if you want, Jordan, at the end of this, like any information that people want, I'll make a list of, and I can send it to you, or they can get in touch with any one of us directly, and we'll make sure they get it. So, all right. So Pablo touched on this, and gosh, he almost hit the nail right on the head. Aggressive types, right? So the thing with being aggressive is that we have to understand that there's a huge difference between being an aggressive firefighter and being a reckless one, right? We don't ever want to do anything that's going to endanger ourselves or others just because pride, right? That doesn't get anywhere, and doesn't get any of us anywhere. So a couple of things on the aggression types. You have sensible, right? I think it's what we all need to aim for because it's managed and it has a purpose. But when we get to being reckless, that's when we show up and we let our emotions play into it, and we just stop thinking clearly, and we're just making poor decisions, right? Irresponsible ones, I don't want to throw anybody on the bus, but I have seen an increase in this. The mentality is, oh, we don't go to fires anymore, so it's not that important to know. And it really is, because when you show up and you're clueless and you're careless, man, my objective at the end of the day is to go home, and I want you to go home too. And when I have somebody that's calling the shots and they're clueless and careless, that's a problem for me, right? Because then that just leads to the whole irrelevant, part of things. You at that point, that's just fear driven. You're making decisions. You're pulling people out of buildings. You're not making stretches. You're not doing any of this stuff. You're calling it fully involved when it's not, because you truly don't know what to do and you're scared to make a decision. And, I know we've all heard it before about the garbage man at Christmas, doesn't get scared. So we shouldn't, when we come around the corner and we see a fire, but people do. And I don't know if that's lack of training or lack of experience or whatever, but somebody called us for a reason, right? Because, hey, when you have a problem with when your power goes out, you call the power company, right? You have a problem in your own house, maybe you have a plumbing issue, you call a plumber, right? That's why they're there. Well, we're the fire department. We're here for all this stuff. So we really need to understand our aggressions and channel those in the most appropriate manner for what our situation is.
Yeah, there is no 912. We are the 911. Whether you're paid, semi-paid, partially paid, volunteer, we're all the professionals that we get, and we're the ones responsible to handle the issue. Calling a mutual aid to handle your issues is, if you need the help, that's one thing, but having them do it for you is totally different.
Right.
So that's a good point. How many, and I'm going to let anyone talk, you can unmute mics or do whatever, but how many people in this class have showed up to a fire scene in somebody else's district for mutual aid and nothing's being done, and they're kind of looking at you like, oh, thank God you're here, now go fight the fire, right? Has that happened to anybody? I hear John chuckling. Chris,
maybe in my volunteer department.
Never.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to say it, and I don't blame for saying it. So I'll say it. I don't care. I have, and it pisses me off. It really does, because it's not my area. I don't live there, but somebody's family does. They live there. That's not our fire. That's their fire, right? And they're hoping that when we show up, we do the right thing. And it just irritates me to no end when you see fire videos online or you show up to these scenes and firefighters who are getting paid, whether it be volunteer, department or not, but you are getting paid by some sort of revenue to be there at that scene to mitigate and handle that emergency, and you choose to do nothing. And why did you even show up?
Absolutely.
Right? That's kind of why I get so angry about it. So
absolutely, that piss. And real quick tangent. I hate. You want to strike a pet peeve with me. You tell me that it's not my emergency. Shit pisses me off. I get paid, or whether I'm a volunteer, doesn't matter. I volunteer my time to be in that person's emergency, or if I get paid to be in that person's emergency. So at that point, I am going to be a professional about it. I'm not going to be emotionally involved in it. You got to be professional, but it is my emergency. That's what I'm there to help mitigate that emergency. That's one pet peeve of mine. Second pet peeve of mine is, for God's sake, we really got to stop comparing ourselves to, and I'm going to keep this PG, I promised I would. We really got to stop comparing ourselves to freaking garbage men boys. I'm not a garbage man. I'm a fireman. And the last I checked, ain't no bag of garbage that's gonna kill a garbage man. So excuse me for pulling up and seeing something that's heavily involved and saying, okay, here we go, boys. It's time to get on our game. Like, compare me to a police officer, compare me to military, but stop comparing ourselves to garbage men. And so, it is okay to say, all right, boys, we got a job, we got a good run. Let's buckle up for this. And we have to be tactically smart about it, right? So that's my two little pet peeves about it.
I think with being tactically smart, it's being good at the basics. Mm-hmm. If you're not good at the basics, man, like, I see these classes about advanced forcible entry, advanced fire attack, all this shit. There's no such thing as advanced. It's being really good at the basics of the job.
Yeah.
I mean, if the line don't get pulled off right, it's a shit show. If you can't get the door open, it's a shit show. Everyone funnels to those specific tasks that aren't getting complete, and then the snowball effect.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I think being an aggressive fireman is being really good at the basics.
Absolutely. Very much.
Absolutely. I
Then-
couldn't agree more.
But once you get past the basics, you've got to move past it. I'm going to throw a shameless plug. I got a company called Beyond the Basics. But you got to do a little bit more, right? You got to know the basics. You got to get them down. I call it muscle memory. Everybody's using it. You got to get that muscle memory so you can do it in your sleep. And then from there, you got to perfect and figure out what's the next step.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree, John. And before we go on the next slide, like everybody's heard that, you know, was it like 1,000 hours or something, like 10,000 hours, something that it takes to perfect something.
Yeah.
That's a long time, right? So I think that's intimidating to people, and that's why they give up on it instead of taking small bites at it and realizing that, hey, man, we have 365 days in a year. If every day you just got 1% better, at the end of that year, you would be 365% better than you were when you started. And that's really the biggest thing. And when that translates into the fire ground, that's a huge issue. You know, we gotta really be doing our best. All right. Does everybody still hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. So what the smoke tells us now, this isn't a smoke reading class, and I try and stay clear of you know, turning it into a tactics class. However, this is huge, especially when we're talking about size ups and we're talking about entry points and where we need to go and make our decisions, because the smoke tells us a lot, right? As you can see, size of the fire, location, how well it's burning, you know, the speed, that's back to time, you know, how much time do I have to get in there and make this search before that gets to me, right? And it talks about, you know, or it tells you about, you know, the things that haven't happened yet that most likely will without any intervention, such as flashover, backdraft, vent point ignition, things like that, right? So the biggest thing for me when it looks at smoke, besides the obvious, is I want to know if this box is still absorbing heat, right? Because I'm obviously not going to go and start making my way into something that's dark, thick, black, turbulent, but I very well might make my way into something that's just kind of laminar and hanging out, right? Because that's a pretty low threat to me in relation to everything else that's going on. So when we talk about smoke reading, just understand that we need to utilize it to make our best tactical decisions. And that's not just for search, but that's also for fire attack. You know, that tells us a tremendous amount of what's occurring inside the building that we may not even be able to see yet. So that goes back to the considerable factors.
And I'm just gonna touch on what Matt Dillon just put up. Predict the fire event before it happens. Position your people accordingly.
Absolutely.
It's so important to know and predict what's going to happen, what's potentially going to happen. Know what kind of flow it is. Do you have a single directional flow coming out, or do you have a bidirectional where air's going in and smoke's coming out? Are you going to be in that flow path? Are you in the exhaust, which is very bad? You know?
Yeah.
So it's important to know what's going to happen. What event are we going to see after this? What will application of water? And I'll take the line from somebody. Water wins. I think it's Kurt. Kurt used it. Water wins.
Absolutely.
Water always wins. Application of water before we get to that point is important. Water wins all the time.
Huge. You know, and I'm glad you touched on flow paths, because that's coming up in the next slide. So we'll just hit on it anyway. We understand those are buoyancy driven, right? So that means something to us, right? So what I mean by that is if you have like hot, very hot fire, all that stuff's going to be high and going away from the fire, right? If you have the cool, it's going to be down low and it's going to be moving towards the fire, right? That's where your unidirectional and your bidirectional flow paths come in. I think that's huge because the location and severity of the fire in relation to victim location is paramount. You know, that's really what we're after. And if we don't understand all the things that tell us that, then we're going to get ourselves in a really, really bad place when all we were trying to do was remove somebody from that bad place initially, right? So now, again, here we are, the rescuers become victims. And we want to try and stay clear of that as much as possible. All right. You want to go to the next one, Jordan?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So just real quick with the flow paths, like here's a slide about it here. Understand that our actions at the fire, they're not the only actions that have an impact on our victims, right? So when we start opening and closing doors or windows deeper into the structure, all that changes flow paths and pressure and all that within the structure too. So that can also have an impact on fire behavior and victims. The best thing that you can do when you come in, if you've searched that room, is close that door. We preach that all the time. A lot of our victims are now being found behind closed doors. And there was even an article a couple of years ago that came out where, this couple was in this house for a significant amount of time. Didn't look like anybody was survivable, but they were in a room behind a closed door, and hey, they were. So make an effort that when you bypass something and you search it, close that. It's going to benefit everybody, because the flow paths it affects the victim's survivability, but it also affects our safety as firefighters. So if we have multiple flow paths, that's going to cause a significant change in our fire behavior.
Sean, I want to talk about that real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of people have an issue with closing doors. I'm going to tell you right now, I think firemen are scared of the dark and not knowing where they are.
Yeah.
I'll be profound with that statement. I think everybody's that way. We don't want to close things that we might not be able to find our way back out to or open back up. Again, that coordinated search. And again, that comes with training, comes with experience. And it's important to know how your crew is going to react to you. If you're a volunteer, you never know what crew you're going to have. It could from call to call. So you don't know if you're going to have that rookie that just got out of Fire One, or you got the salty fireman that's been around, or it's just two of you or whatever it is. You've got to plan and practice for that and know and come up with how you're going to handle those situations. Career side's a little bit different. You've got a set crew. So you know potentially how that person reacts or acts at that fire or what they're going to do. Some of the best guys I've crawled down a hallway with, I've never had to talk to, because he knows what my action is and what my reaction is going to be to certain situations.
Absolutely. And especially, I love that you said that, John, because I know you're an officer. That goes back to from a tailboard standpoint. I'm a tailboard. I'm not an officer. From a tailboard standpoint, I need to show up I want to show up to the firehouse, especially if I don't know my officer, or I'm getting to know him, or I'm getting to know my crew. I want my officer to let me know what his expectations are. And we need to talk about it. And I'm going to let him know what my expectations are. We need to be on the same boat before we even get out of the firehouse.
Pablo, you're absolutely right. When I get somebody new that's either detailed or on a cover to my truck, I tell them what their tool assignment is and what I expect. And I actually break it down sometimes by building construction type and what we've got, what I expect, different tool packages for different buildings. Mm-hmm. It's important. I know what I carry. I carry a Halligan and my TIC. I just changed it. I added a fire maul to my tool package, so I can better effectively do forcible entry. I don't have to wait on my jump seat guy to come up and assist with that, but he's at least has a 6-foot hook and a striking tool. Absolutely. In case it's harder. But again, that tool package changes. Depends upon what type of building we go to. We go to a class 1 high rise. We're going to be bringing heavy irons. So now he's going to bring he'll bring a sledge, and now he's going to start carrying the rabbit tool also. Absolutely. It all depends. And again, having that conversation of expectations of what you want from that person, because if they don't do what you want, it's on you. It's on the officer for not telling
Absolutely.
Them what to do.
And from a state of Florida standpoint, John, I love that you said it, because I know that you work for a heavy urbanized area up in the East Coast. And from the state of Florida standpoint, from a more rural standpoint, hey, depending on what I'm showing up as, first, second, or third due, completely changes what I'm operating as. So I could literally be operating as a nozzle man, or I could be taking a roof. So that definitely understanding what the officer expects before you even go on the first EMS run is a huge key to success.
Absolutely. I agree with all of that, and our engines are toolboxes, most like, just like every other piece of apparatus we have, right? It's got specific things on it for a specific reason, and we need to know what they are so that when we do get that assignment, we know how to operate. So this slide that we're looking at now, this is something that comes out from Firefighter Rescue Survey. So just, I don't need to read it to you. Everybody can read, but those numbers right there, those statistics, that just furthers the point that we can't be showing up and just taking people's words for it. And we talked about the numbers of surveys and everything coming out, but think about that. We look at 27% at this time that had no reports at all. To me, that's a pretty large amount of number that we're finding victims in areas that somebody said was all clear, right?
Yeah.
And so we need to ask ourselves, why is that? Could that be intentional? Absolutely. We got people do all kinds of crazy things. Very well could be. Could it be by accident? Yeah. I'm going to tell you, I have 2 little girls. So if my house catches on fire, my priority is my wife and my daughters, right? Now, if they had a friend sleeping over, hey, in that moment of panic, I might not be thinking about her friend. So yes, absolutely. I'm going to say, yep, my wife's here. My 2 kids are here. Everyone's out. We're good. And then once all that adrenaline and everything calms down, I'm going to do what? I'm going to go, oh man, she had a friend over. And now I got to go tell the fireman. So a lot of that stuff contributes, I think, to our numbers of reports of nobody being inside.
I'll throw something out at you. Sometimes the police try and do their best to help us out, and they do sort of a disservice. I got a lot of friends who are cops, and they do a great job, but they tell you, all right, everybody's out. Well, what about the person that ran back in to go get their stash of whatever they needed, or their?
Mm-hmm.
I work in a very urban area that's very impoverished, so people have their whole life in that apartment that they have, and they might not be trusting banks, so they keep their cash under their wherever.
Right.
So people are running back in for their cash, their valuables, sometimes their drugs. It happens, but so you get told everybody's out. Hey, you know what? Everybody's shoulders go, right? That you're like, all right, we know we can go do what we got to do. We don't have somebody entrapped or whatever else, but it's not clear till we say it's clear. And we got to go in and do that primary. Like we're looking to find a victim. Andy Starn said it to me. He goes, listen, you got to search like you're always going to find a victim. And that stuck with me. I had a small fire in a basement, and it was just a real light smoke condition. I'm using my thermal imaging camera, and I scan, and I got a person standing in the corner. I'm like, what is that? It's the guy that was trying to put the fire out. He was already outside and ran back in a different door to try and come back and fight the fire after I was told everybody's out.
Yeah.
And then I found the silhouette. Then I grabbed the guy because he wanted to go back out that other door. And he went back in the way we went. But that's besides the point.
No, that's good that you add that, because I think we run into that quite a bit. I mean, that's someone's life burning. Of course, I think it's all human nature to want to try and prevent that from getting any worse. So that's definitely something that we need to be considering.
So one thing that we talked pretty heavy about last night when me, Pablo, and Sean and Chris were talking is the words all clear. The words all clear, I have noticed, has multiple definitions. All clear from a search. All clear, there's no LELs in the building. All clear on a fire alarm, there's no smoke or anything in the building. All clear, hey, there's no fire extension. And I think that's a bad thing to have multiple definitions of that phrase. You have to decide what that specifically means. Because I could say all clear on this call, and then I say all clear on the next call, but it has 2 different words, 2 different meanings. It kind of creates some confusion. So I think as an organization, that's something that terminology has to be consistent on every call, and God forbid every shift, which I know would probably never happen, but 3 shifts, 3 fire departments, but you have to really work on that. And that's officer expectations that dictates if something's going to stick or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. All right, so moving on to the next one.
Yes, sir. No, don't have to yell at me.
Hey, whoa. You watch your tone, young man. All right. Go ahead and change that slide there, Jordan, there we go. So is everybody yeah, thank you. Is everybody familiar with this grab here? Nope, not that one. Go back one, please.
The St. Louis job.
There we go. Yep.
Yeah.
So Pablo's familiar with it. This is 2019 in St. Louis. Now, this is a perfect example of why we can't believe what people say. They found 4 kids in this fire. 4. Okay. To me, that's just crazy. And mom wasn't there, right? She wasn't there, but this fire was reported to have nobody inside, and they show up what they do. Right? They go in, they found one in a closet. I think 2 were in a play tent. And there was one like standing in the doorway. And it's crazy because these kids were all under the age of 4 years old. So think about that for a moment. They have no direction, no guidance. They don't even have the ability to call for help if something was to happen. So here they are in there. And if you look at each one of these pictures, you look over there in the top right, this firefighter is giving that little girl ventilations, right? So that tells you what? We don't have much time, right? The longer they're in there, the worse it is for them.
What are you doing?
Whoa.
What? Who was that?
Stand by. We're good.
Okay.
That could have gotten awkward.
Yeah, just a little bit. What that means is like when we read the UL studies and stuff like that, they talk about exposure duration and everything like that, right? That the longer we're exposed to it, the worse it is for us. But it also talks about what we're being exposed to. So you can have an exposure for a short amount of time and still have a fatal outcome, or you can be exposed for a fairly large amount of time and still have a fatal outcome. So that really means for us as searchers, we can't be showing up and being like, there's no way somebody's alive in there. It's just not possible. Because every situation is dictated differently. So,
hey, before we move on, I want to ask this question: What is a credible source of information on a fire scene? You pull up my kids in there, or the neighbors saying they have 3 kids in that house. What do you guys consider to be credible sources as a first due officer?
Me, as the searcher, the fire crew, that's my credible source. I don't listen to police officers. I don't listen to bystanders. I know what they say and I move on because I still have a job to do. And I'm not going to let what they say stop me. And I don't care if they say, look, everyone's here. Great. I still don't know that, right? If I take what you say and I go, great, and I slow myself down, and then on the secondary search or maybe during overhaul, I find 2 kids or, somebody different, maybe it's a mom or somebody, I'm going to take that hard. I'm going to take that a lot harder because I slowed myself down. I put it in my mind that, okay, my level of importance of where I decide to do things got dropped because of what this person said. All right. That's just my opinion. Somebody else might be different, but I think that we are the ones that need to make the determination whether that building is all clear or not.
Well, if I may, I have something real quick, and it's an analogy, right? So let's say you're taking the biggest test of your life. All right. So you are taking something that you have been wanting to achieve for a long, long time. And I came up to you and I don't know you. And I said, Jordan, John, Sean, whoever. I'll be like, hey guys, and I don't know you. I have the answers to your test. Here's your test. You have them. They're legit. They're the real answers. I'm not trying to mess with you. They're the real answers. Do you take my information? Do you take it, or do you still do your own research, right? The analogy goes to the fire ground. I'm going to take this information that the homeowner, the police officer, whatever is giving me. I'm going to note it. I'm going to understand it. I'm not going to just discard it. It's going to be, I'm going to take it, but I still have to do my own research, which is then turns into, we're still going to search, right? So that's kind of the answer that I got.
Pablo, I just want to jump in. Again, let's go back to Fire 1. What's a primary search? Rapid, thorough search looking for fire and life. So we got to get in there and find the fire anyway. Might as well search for the people while we're doing it. Correct?
Absolutely. 100%.
So,
yeah.
whether like you said before, if you don't have an engine, if you don't have a truck company, somebody still has to do a search. They got to do a primary, and the primary's got to be done looking for both fire and life.
Absolutely.
And it can
John,
be done at the same time. Yeah, go ahead.
I think you're reading my mind, bud.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. That's
you're
beautiful,
on point.
John. Yeah.
Because when we switch to this next slide here, you're going to see a lot of what you just said, and I want everybody to see it because you don't have to stop talking, but it all makes sense of going in to find fire and light. So
yeah. So one last point before we move on. I am amazed in 2020, people don't know their neighbors. They don't know anything about their neighbors, if they have kids, any of that stuff. So, for me, it's kind of hard to say, all right, I'm solely basing my tactical decision off of a complete stranger. It's that's something that you just, like you guys said, and I agree 100%, do your own. Sean, you raised your hand, bud.
No, I didn't.
Do your own assessment, do your own homework for your scene. All right, so moving on, we're starting to lose some people on this thing, but we're going to keep chugging along.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we good on this one?
Yeah, we can move on. I want John to finish up his statement while we bring up this next slide because it fits so well and people can actually physically see the points. There you go, John. Go ahead and continue, buddy.
So basically, as we search, and I'm lucky enough to be on a truck company. Our truck company gets out first. That's what we do. We're the pathfinders. All right. The fire service, and I'm gonna go on a tangent to bring it back. The fire service is great at stretching our initial line. What are we not good at? Redeploying that initial line. All right. They found that in the slicers and the transitional attack study. We're great at that initial stretch. So if we stretch wrong the first time and not find the seat of the fire, we're not going to get that line in play in between life and fire. So truck company guys are the first due in, however you make it. You got to find that path to the fire, call it out, and continue your search. If you're able to control that door, close that door, do the sweep inside. If you got a can, hey, knock it down. Nothing's better than knocking a fire out and not having the engine company guys open that nozzle. Okay, I even sort of I hedge my bets. I put foam in my water can. I put a couple cups of foam in. We shake it up every morning just in case to get that added knockdown in power and that stopping power. But if we get able to knock that down, close that door, whatever we got to do, and continue to search safely. Again, we're not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize us. Remember, risk a lot, save a lot, risk nothing to save nothing. But we got to do that right. And again, and we find out that, what was that? 4.2% are found in the fire room. All right. And you find the seat of the fire 56% of the time. All right. It's important. You got to find the fire, whether it's the main fire body of fire, or you're going to find other fires potential from extension.
Yep. And one thing I'll add about that, John, is, right, so we're searching for victims, right? That's fine. But the one thing that's the threat to all of us is that fire. So one of the best things that we can do is to start suppressing that fire and get some ventilation going. That's going to be beneficial to everyone.
You're absolutely right. It's get that line in play makes everything better, right? And you start reading Norman's Fire Officer's Handbook of Strategy and Tactics. Hey, fire goes out, things get better.
Yeah.
I would say almost 90% of the time, right? Probably a little bit more. But you put that fire out, things get better in life.
Absolutely. All right, Jordan.
Okay.
You got anything to add? Yeah.
Nope.
All right, so we just touched on visibility. Why fire attack is hitting the fire, and searching along the way, and maybe we're waiting on a search crew, or maybe we are the search crew. This is paramount. We want to be able to see, right? When we go in and we start searching, most of the time it's lights out, right? We're having to feel things and make our way through and spread out and clear spaces. Imagine how much more effective we can be if we can see, right? So this is just a definition of what different levels of visibility are. And I think realistically, I would like to be somewhere between moderate and high. So we ask ourselves how we do that, right? If we're searching, if any of you have ever done any research on the Governor Island study and found out what they found, and it's great. When we search and we go ahead and we isolate ourselves behind that closed door, if we were to go take a window to aid us in ventilation and get that lift so we can do a better search, that has zero relation on the fire because we're isolated from it. So even if we don't have fire attack in play right now, we're fairly okay, right? Now, what does that do? That buys us some time, but it buys our victims time because, like John touched on, our primary search should be fast. So, God forbid you missed somebody the first time, at least you left them in a better environment because now you left and you closed the door behind you. They're isolated and all that stuff is exhausting, right? So, you're giving them that extra chance that you may not if you just go in, do a quick search, and come right back out, and you leave the door open or you don't take the window. So
Absolutely.
just keep in mind.
Just want to touch on something that's in the chat room. My buddy Sean Egan's in here.
Yeah, that was good.
Sean's got Sean does this. He's a captain up in Buffalo. It's so important for the engine company to notify companies if they abandon the stretch for a rescue. Because you know what? There's no water going on the fire unless there's a second line. Sean had had a double fatal fire a couple of weeks ago, and their companies were making rescues, and it's a crazy video that was out there on Facebook. But great point, Sean. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. You got the next one up there, Jordan?
Yep.
Hey, Sean, how's it going, buddy? I didn't see you pop in. All right, so this one, again, another fire that I put in there because it is one of those aspects where it can easily distract us from what our priority is, right? I would definitely say, without a doubt, fire attack is important in this particular situation. The minute we go take a VES and we take this window, that fire is coming right to it because it's uncontrolled. Right? That can have significant ramifications for us. So take a look on the Bravo side, though, in that back corner. There's another window back there. That's where our size up on our search comes in. Because if I ask you which one of those windows are you going to pick, which one will you? They're both equally important to me, right? There's spaces we have to search. But what about staffing levels? What if we're short staffed and we can only get into one of those rooms? Which one are you choosing and why? That's the question we have to answer every single time that we show up and we start doing our tactical priorities. So me personally, and this is just me, like I said, it's not a tactics class, but what I would do is I would have, let's say I ride a 2-man engine. I'd have my partner be suppressing that fire while I dumped into one window, cleared that space, came back out and dumped into that other one. Okay. That's what I would personally do. Because it makes sense for what my staffing levels are and what I know my abilities are. Everyone's different. So I threw that in there for that. So if anybody has anything else they want to add in there, please do.
Yeah, it goes back to the adage. Can you safely split a crew? Absolutely. You know, can we do anchor oriented man searches? Can we do searches off of a hose line? Can we do split searches? Absolutely. We don't need to continue. We were talking about this last night with Jordan for a little bit. We don't need to continue these training scars that we have right from the fire academies, right? We do this to ourselves, whether it be on engine companies, whether it be truck companies, whether it be ambulances, whatever or whatnot. We have training scars that we develop from the academies. You know, like, well, we need to go in and do a right hand search pattern or a left hand search pattern. We need to have our in contact with a wall. We need to be in physical contact with ourselves. From a hose line standpoint, we need to always hit the seat of the fire. We can't, we don't cool environments. These are all training scars that we do to ourselves from the academies. And from a VES standpoint, like, we got to be careful with the training scar of saying, oh, we need two people to VES. You know, like, can we do a split VES? Can you do multiple windows? Can you do a VES beyond the door? Understanding that you know, like, it's a 10 by 10 room for the most part. You know, a 10 by 10, an 11 by 12 if it's a larger room in most of these private dwellings, right? So we need to get away from training scars that we continually do from the fire academies that we take onto the fire ground.
Absolutely.
I think one thing with this building, or this specific picture, is what is the building construction? If it's a balloon frame, that is something that I'm worried about, because fire can be everywhere in that situation. But you know, it's, for me, this is if I'm lucky and I have the 3-man engine, you know, we can do a lot. But if typically I'm just 2 guys on the engine and then I have a medic following me behind with the driver and the battalion is in his car, you know, we're going to be forming a group very quickly to get this done. It's all about, what have you trained for? Are you on the same page in this scenario? And getting that first line in place. For me, I'll be up front, getting the line in place first, and then splitting off of that to do the surge. That's just my staffing. I got to get it done.
So
I would agree with that, Jordan.
I'm going to throw this out there. How many people are knocking that fire down and going through the front door first? How many times are we putting that first line always through the front door? Mm-hmm. Again, in the fire service, we don't, those 2 words, always and never, right? What's the majority of the time are we doing? Are we putting that line through the front door, or is it better or can we get it around from the back and push it out?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
That's part of that 360, and I'll call it the 380 size up. You know, I throw Ryan Pennington a bone again from hoarding and jump seat training. That 380 of the cues and clues on the outside, that extra 20%, but getting around the back to figure out if you have a quick access point coming from the Delta side to the Charlie to blow that straight out. That's a textbook fire for me. Blow that right out. That looks like a 1-room burnout, that living room potentially.
Right.
But again, large fire, large water. Maybe it depends on what size hose we're grabbing. Are we grabbing 1 3/4? Definitely not taking the 1.5. Maybe bumping up to a 2 if you have it. 2.5s are tough, because once you get them in place, it's tough to move unless you got the manpower.
Right.
Yeah, I want to touch on what Sean just said too. He made a good point, that everybody gets distracted by the fire, and that's the truth, right? When we look at this, our eyes naturally want to gravitate towards light. So boom, whoa, that's a big volume of fire, right? So now we're consumed with that aspect that we lose track of everything else that still needs to happen or that may be happening around us. So that was a good thing that Sean brought up. So thank you for that, brother. I appreciate it. Jordan, if you want to go to the next one, unless somebody else has anything to add.
Dane had a question about least tenable window first. So which window would you pick? And it's tough to figure out, because right now I'm going to use my thermal imaging camera to scan that A side window, right? What does it say? Right. Thermal imaging cameras can't see through glass, but you can see through the outside, right? You can see around. Is that house 100%, perfectly sealed? You're going to get heat coming through. You're going to see around the outside. If you don't have heat or anything coming from the outside, guess what? You probably have a closed door.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'll be honest, just looking at this, I don't know. Initially arriving on this, I would say maybe I just have a well-involved porch fire. You know, you don't know. Unfortunately,
that's why that 360 is important, and knowing your jurisdiction, because once you get inside your buildings, like Jordan said, on your EMS runs, you know the size up and the layout of this house.
Yeah, and honestly, like if you look at that first window off to the right, looks like there's good indication that the door's probably closed. There's not a whole lot of smoke or anything pushing out, but we can't say that for sure, right? So what I would do on my 360, I would look at that window to the left. If that had any flame impingement on it or was weakened in any kind, that would be my priority window while a fire attack is happening, because it's already been compromised. So that means a lot of smoke and heat has already made its way into that space. For me, that's priority. But like I said, everyone's different. Those are all things that come with experience and getting out there and seeing things firsthand. So,
hey, I had a question sent to me. It was, could you could you use a deck gun for a quick hit and send your crew into one of the windows with a line? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah,
I'm going to say your accuracy. How often do you shoot your deck gun? That's just my point, because you're dropping a lot of water real quick. You might put it right up and over. A good placed line in a transitional mode to put it inside there, reset the room. I think you got a better shot with your gallonage, especially if you don't have a water supply.
I agree with you. By the way, John, I agree with you 100% on that. A little tidbit, and I got this from the boys down in a little plug for the boys in Liberty City, the Miami-Dade County boys. Bill McCann down there, man, they do a good job of just stretching and training every day. I put, because of them, and I saw it with them doing first, I put a gate valve on, we run a gate valve on our deck gun. So it's closed. So when absolutely it's closed. So when the driver pulls the lever, nothing comes out until he goes up top, points wherever he needs to, and then opens the gate valve. So and like I said, I took that one. I wish I came up with that, man, but I saw that one from Billy McCann down there in Liberty City, man, and damn, that was smart.
What I love about that though is you free up. You don't have to put one of your line guys on top of the engine. You know, you're maximizing your staffing. It's a force multiplier is what Chief Howard Reinwald always says. But man, if you got a ram nozzle, mercury, whatever it is, one of those quick throw down monitors, 500 gallons a minute, you know, that's a quick. Ours is pre-connected on the back of our truck, so we can pull that off, hit it real quick, and then go down on size of line if you need to. The biggest thing is have the plays in your playbook and be ready for them. But if your officer throws the audible at you, you got to be prepared for the audible as well.
Okay.
If you don't have discussions.
What about the deuce and a half with a breakaway tip?
Yeah. Another great
absolutely.
option.
Yeah.
You know, then you follow it up with 100 foot of dry line, and once you do that knockdown, I did that when I was covering on an engine. We had a fire in a 4-story ordinary with a large setback. It was on the Bravo Charlie side, blowing out both windows, first floor, auto exposing to the second. And I led off with the 2.5, reset the room, dropped it down, and then we disconnected the stack tip and when it mopped it up with the 1 3/4.
Yep, absolutely.
But again, you've got to have the tools in the toolbox, not the physical tools, but the mental tools of doing it, and not just listening to us talk about it today. Get out there and stretch it. See how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen to that, John, because that's what I always tell everybody. Look, be careful who you choose to listen to, right? If I tell you something, I want you to challenge me. I want you to go out there and train on it. And then if you find a deficiency in it, ask me why I feel the way I do, because you proved me wrong, right? That is my challenge to everybody. Because if you're not doing those things, then I'm just going to assume that you're just taking it how it's meant to be from somebody, and that person may be very inexperienced with what they're saying. And until proven, knowledge is just theory. That's all it is. So you need to be putting that into application. So we'll move on from that. Closed doors are open opportunities, right? I truly believe this. There's a lot, like I said, teaching on this. There's some levels there. Just look at the oxygen percentage when the door's closed. 18%. Well, 21% is like our normal breathable air. 18% when the door's closed, I think that's pretty good. We can manage that, right? But as soon as we open it, that goes all the way to 8%. That can't support life, right? And if you're breathing, you won't be breathing for very long. So even looking at the toxic gas levels, you know, we just talked about exposure duration and its relation into time. 100 parts per million when the door's closed, 10,000 parts per million when it's open. Those are huge numbers. That's a big change. So if you go to the next slide, Jordan.
Yeah. Hold on. Chris just put up a great paragraph basically in the chat. Chris, you just want to talk on that real quick?
Well, this is all Andy's information and Joey DeVito's information. It's not mine, but it's just something that I've learned through them over time, that we need to start establishing a thermal imaging culture. And you know, there are expensive cameras out there, and you know, not every fire department has the privilege of having one. So you can't replace your natural instincts of sizing up a building with technology. But when you have that piece of technology, it makes your job as an officer so much easier. Doing that 360 size up of your building, you're initially off the bat going to be able to find where the fire is located as you're walking around the structure, seeing where that fire is moving to, and looking for those survivable, tenable spaces. For those of you that haven't seen or heard of Andy Starnes, he's got a great webinar on May 11th, Intelligently Aggressive Fireground. It's from 7 to 10 p.m. Go on his Facebook page with Firefighter Training. He's got some great information, especially for people that aren't too versed with thermal imaging cameras or haven't had a lot of hands-on with it. He goes over a lot of great information on the basics, what you need to look for, how you can quicken up your search process a lot easier when you're gathering layout information inside of a zero invisibility environment, and also how to tactically apply water to a fire in a zero visibility environment. That way you're what I like to call is eliminating the colors in a coloring book. And I see John's got his Seek Thermal there too. I carry mine on my gear too. I actually just bought one recently, so I'm going to be carrying that with me as well. It's a great tool, especially it's not a what we call a tactical decision making camera. It's a it's more just a general awareness level of finding where your windows, where your doors are, and it's great for every firefighter to have. That way they're able, especially in a Mayday situation, they're able to find tenable space for themselves as well. So
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you. I was wondering when you were going to stop being so quiet back there.
I like to listen and gather information, but you know me.
For all of you that don't know Chris, he's I don't want to say he's the shy one, but he's definitely more of the introverted one. So
I'm working on it.
I know. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Feel free to chime in whenever you want, man. Everyone's able to. Go to the next slide there, if you don't mind, Jordan. So this is the two rooms side by side, right? This is a fire with the door closed. If you look in that from the outside perspective, if we look at that building that was just on fire, and then we put this in relation, we could very well have a space that looks like this somewhere inside of that structure. And when we're just writing things off because the fire looks big and it's scary and we don't know what to do because we don't have the information or the lack of experience or whatever the case may be, this is what we're missing. And that's the whole basis behind this class, is getting in here and getting things done. Because what if this person didn't have smoke detectors or any ability for early warning? Maybe they don't have any pets that are waking them up because of the sound of fire and smell of smoke or whatever. They're in that room and we're writing it off and we're going in when? Shoot, that could be 10 minutes, right? So it could be 15, it could be 20, depending on your staffing levels or when you choose to prioritize that search. So we need to be making this happen more quickly in our algorithms. And don't be so married to an algorithm either, to where you're going literally down that checklist of what to do. Use your mind, use your experience, because the reality is, if we're going to be telling these people to close their doors because we're coming for them, then we need to stop being hypocrites and we need to actually go look for them, right? Because that is what their expectation is. They've listened to us, so now it's time for us to do our part.
Just by teaching that in your fire education to the public, you are creating survivable spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys remember exit drills in the home when they were hitting that really hard? Like, have a space that you meet, and all. Nobody practices that ever. Nobody does. And somebody mentioned that in the comments earlier, and I forgot to touch on it, but that is the truth. So now we finally have something that people are listening to and they're practicing it. Let us do our part. If we went through the trouble of studying this and putting it out there saying, well, this is what we need you to do to help us get you out, then we need to get into these spaces and we need to identify them immediately and start making this stuff happen. There's no excuse for finding something like this during overhaul. All right. Anybody got anything else to add? All right. So here's the key elements to the search, right? The thing with those is we need to be searching like our life depends on it, right? And Pablo touched on this earlier with athletes. When athletes have a game, or maybe it's a fighter or something like that, and they're getting prepped up, they study hours and hours and hours of footage because they want to know their opponent. Yet we sit in a firehouse for 24 hours and we can't know our layouts, at least in our first due. We can't understand our building construction. We can't understand fire behavior or smoke behavior. We can't do any of that stuff. But these guys who get paid to play a game do it religiously and they do it well and they win. And we're failing. There's no excuse for that. Okay. We are professional. We owe it to ourselves that when we're on duty or off duty, we really need to be trying to become subject matter experts on things that are going to kill us and things that are going to kill them. Because if you're not doing that, then you're just getting a paycheck. If you're just getting a paycheck, then you could just find a different job. You know, there's plenty of good paying jobs out there. You don't need to be here if you don't want to do what you want to do. So, anybody else?
No, bro, that's a true story, bro. I couldn't agree more.
So the big thing is like people's lives aren't a game, right? And I just, man, it just irritates me to no end because we do stuff like this.
Real quick, Sean. No, I've always said this, man. We as firemen, we sell ourselves bullshit, and for whatever reason, we buy the bullshit that we sell ourselves. We don't recognize it as bullshit. You know, we think for whatever reason we're gonna come out of minimum standards, and you got a nice fancy T-shirt on, and we're gonna sit on a recliner, and one day after, you know, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe a handful of months, depending on who you work for, you're gonna wake up one day and you're gonna do a search of a house, or you're gonna throw a ladder or a second floor or a third floor and do a victim removal. Yeah, okay, that's not gonna work. You know, it is what it is. It's not gonna work. So
yeah,
we sell ourselves that bullshit and we buy it. So we need to physically and mentally be prepared by training like professional athletes. You know, so anyway. So just
I mean, you're absolutely right. Minimal standards leads to minimal results.
Yeah.
You know, that's just it right there. You know, if that's where your training stops, because you got your nice fancy piece of paper and you got your job, congratulations, but don't expect anything else.
Yeah.
Right. And you're really robbing the citizens because they are putting their trust in you. And when you cry that you need a pay raise because your job is so important, or we're in times like we are now where, oh, I'm essential, my job's essential. Well, then you better be damn essential. Right. Yeah. And when you do stuff like this and you search on your hands and knees like this and you do bare minimum stuff, then I'm sorry, you're not essential because you're not doing any good. Yeah. Right.
Well, I think, and we talked about it last night, accidental success.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got lucky on this one, or, you know, the fire went out with the 95 gallon per minute automatic nozzle for 15 years. You know, we got away with these things for so long. We haven't learned and adapted, and we haven't gotten caught with our pants down yet. That accidental success, being lucky, creates complacency.
I love to hear the whole fire went out thing. Hey, just a random thought. The Twin Towers would have already gone out by this time. You know what I mean? Eventually everything goes out by itself, boys.
Yeah.
All fires go out, but you're absolutely right. You talked about complacency. I'm going to throw out a phrase called normalization of deviance.
Oh, great video.
A good friend of ours, John Dixon, is a captain up by me in Teaneck, New Jersey, does a whole class on normalization of deviance. All right. Again, because we got lucky one time and nothing bad happened.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to do it until it catches up with us.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a great point there, John, because if you look at this video, or I'm sorry, this picture, that's me and Pablo, right? Back when we worked together and we were fortunate enough to be on the same shift at the same station, we would do stuff like this all the time. And if you look closely, that's baby powder on the floor. And the reason we did this is to show how ineffective the search actually is, because if you look, his head might be up and he might be searching that countertop, but he's not going to be able to keep his head up like that for very long because it's uncomfortable and it hurts. And my head is down and I'm literally searching the same 3 feet he is right behind him in this Congo line of bodies, right? So we put this victim here to show what are we most likely to do? Keep your hand on the wall because that's what we're told to do. Don't ever lose that wall. And then my other hand's on the tool. I'm not really focused on swinging that tool and trying to find stuff because I'm literally just moving with him. And if he's hauling ass through that, now I'm trying to play catch up with him, right? And I'm not searching anything at this point. So if you go to the next slide.
Just one sec. Take a look at the Halligan position. You'll never know if there's a step or a drop.
Absolutely.
Take that Halligan, flip it over on the adze and the pike, and as you're sweeping potentially, or you put it on your inside arm. You put on the inside. If you're doing that right hand search, bump yourself out off that wall and use your own hand. What does the end of a Halligan? What does the end of a Halligan know if it comes in touch with something soft or a person?
100%. Yeah,
100%. Bump yourself out and bump the other person out. Split search the room. Even better, you have that third person with a thermal imaging camera sitting as an oriented search and talking to your guys. It's one of the things that we said before. Darkness is scary for firemen. We don't like it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
we can overcome that by speaking and guidance. You're going to come across this. You're going to see this. And I don't know if I'm jumping ahead or not, but
no,
you're good. You're good.
You're good, man. And going back to that right there, the reason that Sean and I put these particular slides in right here is, and I said it a little earlier, is we're going back to the training scars. When you sell yourself bullshit and you're like, oh, well, yeah, whatever, I'll rise up to the occasion whenever I have to search or whatever, but you don't challenge yourself, you don't train, you don't go outside of your comfort zone, you fall back to your training scar. And what is the training scar? You're going back to this stuff. You're going back to, you're searching off of fear. You're not tactically searching. I love what Sean, I was looking at what Sean Egan said here about getting away from searching with a tool. The truth of the matter is, me personally, when we do our oriented search, I don't search with a tool. When I get to my room that I'm searching, I'm putting my tool at the doorway, and that anchor man, that orient man, sits at that doorway with his tool, with the tick or whatnot, and I'm freehand searching that area. At the end of the day, you gotta know what you're searching. It's a 10 by 10 room. It's a 10 by 11, 11 by 12. So couldn't agree more with what Sean Egan said there. And like that picture right there is literally what happens. You fall back to your training scars right there.
You do. And, I don't know if anybody's paying attention to it there, but if you see what happens, Pablo and I actually switched. We switched spots. So now I'm in front and he's behind me. We got to the door, we swept outside, and we do what they tell you to do. All right, switch searchers. That's a topic for another day. I'm going to say that I personally feel like that's ineffective because now you're exhausting all of your resources instead of keeping one person fresh and focused on orientation.
Absolutely.
However, what we did do is we completely passed that victim. And what are we going to do if we find this victim? Let's say we go with Jordan's analogy. We got lucky. We found them by accident. In our minds, because of how we're trained to do things in the fire academy, a minimal standard, we are going to grab this victim and we're going to go back out the exact way we came because that's all we know.
The same way we came in.
So in an effort to tell us that keeping our hand on the wall is supposed to keep our orientation in case you find a window or a door, we're not doing that, are we? We're going to find this person and we're going to turn right back around and go right through that IDLH atmosphere that we just crawled through, and that's how we're removing them. So that's doing nobody any good, and it's painfully slow, right? We have to get better at being professionals and moving through these spaces in a manner that makes sense and that's effective.
Yeah. So if we're doing VES and we teach it across the country, when I mean we, I'm not talking about us here. I'm talking about the entire country teaches VES, and we preach VES, which is it's a way of searching rooms that are blocked off by fire. And you go in there and you isolate, right? We know how to VES. So my question for the 60 plus people that are watching, for us right now, is why are we not teaching the same thing from the interior? We go back to the training scar. The training scar is when we find the victim, we go back out the same way we came in, the long way. Isolate yourself from the interior. Reverse VES. You find the victim inside that room. You turn back to your partner. Your partner's the one that's sitting at being your orient man. You turn back to him. Hey Sean, I got myself a victim. Sean radios in, closes the door behind me. Now we're in that room. Now we reversed VES each other into that room. We bought ourselves times to get that victim out that window, call command, tell them where we're at, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. And just one thing before we move on, and unless somebody has anything else, is the whole reason, if you look at the question at the top, why are we taught this? The fire service has a horrible habit of letting things go, right? We develop a way to do things, and that, oh man, that's just got to be the way it is, right? And don't you ever challenge that, because if you do, it's going to be problems. And we need to understand that assessing the way we do things isn't always bad. If we're talking about progression, when we change things, we're implying that it no longer works, right? Like, hey, this isn't working, we need to change it. But when we're progressing on something, that progression is saying, hey, you know what? This works, but it could be better. And in this particular situation for this, we've progressed past that into other ways of searching, because this particular way was meant for when they didn't have air packs and the cooler, fresher air was closer to the floor for not only us, but our victims. Okay. And that's why that search came into play, right? This still has a place on our fire ground. Yeah. It's when it's really, really hot and you got to haul ass and get out of there. Okay. That's a good way to do it. However, you run the risk of falling into a hole because your body is off center. So there are pluses and minuses, but when we're talking about victims and how we need to find them, we need to change our stances, and we need to be getting better at learning how to do that instead of do this.
Absolutely.
And if you decide to do this as a training, you're going to need a lot of bottles of baby powder, and you're going to get a weird look from the chick from Dollar General.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah, you will.
All right, so we've been at it for like 2 hours now. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah, man.
All right, let's do it.
If anyone's got to bounce, feel free to take off. I totally understand.
Yeah. Well, you're recording this, so they can come back and watch it later, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, cool. All right, so we'll just finish. We'll keep it going.
Okay.
All of us are long-winded and we're passionate, and I love it. So this is great.
We still got about 60 people online with us. So.
Yeah, I'm
awesome.
kind of shocked.
Awesome. Well, for that, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is the triangle position. If you notice, in between, John talked about taking a can with you, and he puts foam and stuff in it, and all those things to help him with his effectiveness. This is going to help you with your effectiveness if you carry the can this way while you're searching. Not only the stance, but you don't have to hold on to it, so you free up that hand, right? Why are we doing this versus crawling? Your body position is more stable. You can look up and around. You can reach out. You can sound the floor in front of you. If you happen to find a hole, you can lean backwards instead of falling forward into it. But really, for me, aside from like the stability of it and everything else, and the ease of motion that you can get, I want to feel changes in my environment. And guess what? When I'm down at the floor and the fire's above me, and I'm 3 feet from the floor, and now I'm just realizing, oh man, it's really, really hot. Things are getting bad. It's already too late. I'm in a bad way. Where if I upright myself into a tripod position like this, and I'm moving through, I will immediately feel that change, right? Because half of me is still below that, and it's going to hit my ears first, and those are super sensitive, even behind a Nomex. So as soon as you feel that, that's your first indication. You're starting to get pushed down. Maybe we need some water application and some ventilation to make this better, because this is not a good spot. You will not realize that until it is way too late if you stay on your hands and knees. I promise. Does anybody have anything to add other than we have to use the techniques that our conditions allow us to use, right? So understanding that although we have preferences, so that's what they are, their preferences, and we have to be mobile and be able to switch those preferences dictated upon our situations we're presented with. Pablo, anybody?
No, but I'm just listening on that one. That was good.
That position's easier for tick scans as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
You're able, and again, I think like we said, firefighters are moths to a flame. We want to go always shoot high and see what's going on above us. Well, it's important to know where's our victims. Our victims aren't floating. So by scanning low, we're staying in hopefully high sensitivity mode a little bit longer, so we can see the victim, the better resolution.
Yeah. And I don't know if we have anybody listening that operates on ambulances that are fire based. But if you are an ambulance fire based organization and you do have the possibility of showing up first due, and you believe in what we're preaching, and that it's not empty until we say it's empty, or vacant until we say it's vacant, and you are going to do a search without an engine crew or without any type of hose line, take a water can, obviously, and like I typed there on the chat there, one of the many reasons that I personally wear a truck belt is it's just I will put the can on the truck on the belt itself, and I'll drag the can around like that. So if I'm ever doing any type of search off the whether I'm assigned as the truck company or the ambulance crew, if I'm doing a search without a hose line, I am taking my can with me, and I am searching like that.
Oh yeah, and Pablo, I got that video of that trailer fire doing the VES with the can that we can put in here and send everybody else to.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're talking about the tripod stance, right? And we're talking about searching. So what happens when we find our victims? The first step in removing our victims is to actually locate them, right? So now we've done that. We found them. If you take a look, this is my captain, my old captain. He's obviously a lot bigger than me. I'm a small guy, you know. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have to move him. What if he went down in a fire? Or what if that's my victim? You know, we have to understand that us as rescuers, we don't get to choose our victims any more than those victims get to choose their rescuers. So if we're showing it in there, like we're coming in and we find them and we don't know how to move them, that's great. You found somebody, but you can't remove them. So they're still just as good as dead, right? It's very imperative that we know how to use our body mechanics and that we're in shape and we can move it. In gear, my captain was about 300 pounds. Okay. So taking this tripod stance just further solidifies why it's so important, because it's stable. So if you see, I grabbed him by the legs, I did a leg lock with his ankles, and I pulled backwards to capture his weight behind my shoulder. Now go ahead and go to the next one, Jordan. So here it is now. I'm moving him, right, to the direction of my exit, which could be a door, a window, something like that, whatever it happens to be. But I'm spread out. So now I've taken his weight plus mine and I've spread it out over a larger surface, which allows me to manage him easily. Now, what I will say about this is you have to understand where your limitations are. If I ask you, what is the largest patient you can move by yourself right now, I would hope you would know. And if you don't know, please find out, because that is going to tell you a lot. If I pull up to or if I find somebody like this and I'm trying to remove them and I don't know that I can at least move 300 pounds by myself, when do I know when to call for help? I don't. And when we're talking about splitting crews on a split search or maybe limited staffing, I might not always have the ability to rely on my partner to get this removal process started. So now we're just sitting ducks. So understanding how to move weight and how much weight you can move before you definitely know you need somebody is huge. And staying away from the tricks and gimmicks of wrapping people up and stuff that you're probably not going to be able to see. And it's going to take a long time to get that person packaged to remove them. One more, Jordan.
Yep.
Also, practice it on real life carpet, not just on the
Yeah.
station floor,
Yeah.
linoleum, or anything else.
Absolutely.
Get that long 1960s, 70s shag rug.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because you're gonna definitely get some friction there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you guys go to the Build Your Culture Facebook page, there's actually a video of us doing this in training in a carpeted room for that very reason, to show you that, man, anybody can look like an expert on a smooth surface.
Yep.
Right. So put those challenges in there that actually halt you and make you work, and you'll see what works and what doesn't. And I can tell you that our students have come back and said that this works tremendously. And like, I love it on whatever like surface that I'm on. It's a huge advantage, especially if you're a smaller framed person. So here we have it where we're simulating a window, right? You put his toes at the base of the window, and then you scoot his ass to the heels, and then you start rolling him. If you go one more, Jordan.
Yes.
So that's pretty effortless. That is actually a snapshot just as I started moving him. when you get them into a seated position like that, it is literally just pushing. And I've done this on Pablo. I actually showed Pablo how to do this particular technique. And so he can vouch for it, that it is almost effortless, especially with a large person, because their weight works in your advantage. And just like anything we do in the fire service, we need to capture our progress. So at this point, as I'm pushing him, you'd want to actually slide your leg underneath in case they did slide down. You don't have to lose everything. One more. Is that it? All right. So I forgot to put the other one in. The other one was just him pretty much upright, but I was still on the ground. So it was easy for me just to finish that. So if I have my partner on the outside of that window, that whole removal process took me about 30 seconds, if that, by myself. Right. So that's, to me, that's something worth knowing. So anybody got something to add?
No, just real quick on that. These are all techniques that are used for large individuals, right? Obviously, we're not. I think it's obvious to say that if I'm doing a search and I come across an 85-year-old that's bedridden and weighs 92 pounds, and and I have to do some type of leg lock to get them out. Maybe I need to reevaluate what I'm doing, right? So this is stuff that when we come across individuals that are like, oh man, this is a little bit heavier set person, or they're heavier set and they're naked, they're burnt, they're diaphoretic, whatever the hell, like they're wet. These are techniques to help you get that type of larger individual out, so just keep that in mind.
Just one of the other things, if they're on the bed, don't pull them off the bed, grab the sheets. Makes it a lot easier.
Absolutely.
You're able to package that up. We've all done that for EMS, right? Pick up the patient in the sheet. So much easier to drag or grab or carry.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate you adding that in there, John, because a lot of people, their first instinct is dump them off, right? You got to use everything to your advantage. If they don't have clothes on, you got to know how to move that patient too. So one of the good things to do that in your training would be to lather your training dummy up with like some of that innovation lubrication jelly or something like that. Make them really slippery, because that's going to change. You can't always rely on having their clothes or a sheet or blanket or any of that stuff to grab. So
absolutely,
knowing all your options.
Just think about how you sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So VES. This is not my saying. This actually came from Brian Brush. He's got an awesome article on this in Firefighter Nation. It's really, really good. But essentially, when we talk about VES, who remembers these tot finders? I know when I was a kid, I remember them, but they kind of phased themselves out. John, do you remember these when you started in the fire service?
Absolutely. Then they became an issue.
Right.
There was a push to put them on the inside of the doors now.
Yes, there is. Yep.
So,
and they changed the logo.
Yes.
So you remember why that was an issue, don't you?
Yeah, pedophiles.
Right. Pedophiles and people moving, right? So
you're right. And they left them on there, and their 20-year-old kid moved out.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason I put this in with the VES is because back before we were assigning names to the things we did, this was pretty much your indication to say, hey, VES this room, right? There's a child in here and things like that. So this was a great tool for us, but it proved to maybe not be so effective as time went on because of the changes. People like not taking them down when they moved. Maybe they moved bedrooms, whatever the case was. Obviously the pedophile issues. So we don't see a whole lot of these anymore, but I'm big on making sure that people stay up on fire service history. So there you go, a little nugget in case you didn't know. Go ahead and move on if you would.
Hey, real quick, Sean, just on talking about nuggets, because the VES slide is on there, and I was talking about the cans and the searches. Chris, I appreciate you putting it on the chat there. I would hate myself if I didn't mention it, man. For whoever doesn't know out there, if you guys ever get a chance to take the Can Confidence course from Eric Wheaton and them boys, Jesus, man, that's probably one of the best courses in the country. So
it is. It definitely was one of the best classes I've taken.
Yeah, they will break down a water can like a freaking cardiologist breaks down the heart, man. That is
It
crazy
is.
the way that they do their class. So I would hate myself if I didn't mention that, man. So if you get a chance to ever check that class out, go ahead. Go ahead, Sean. Sorry.
No, you're good, man. I appreciate everyone's input. You know, you're not cutting me off from anything. So again, everybody can read, they understand, but the biggest thing to know is that in order to be successful here in your VES, you have to train in VES, right? And this is not something that you're going to probably assign an experienced person. I'm not saying that they won't or should never do it, but if you have the option, you probably want your most experienced firefighter performing this technique until that inexperienced firefighter can get a good grasp on it, because it is highly aggressive. I'm not going to sit here and say it's dangerous because I'd be a hypocrite. I think it's everything we do is dangerous. I think if we understand what it is that we're after in doing this technique, then it's fairly safe, just like anything else, right? Advancing line into a house, putting out a fire. Like, yes, there are things that can happen, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, if you pay attention and you understand what it is that you're doing, it's a calculated risk. And you know, there's a lot of debate about VES, like what are our roles? You know, should a person stay at a window? Should both people go in? You know, should we use a thermal imager? Should we do this? I'm going to tell you, use whatever methods you feel is going to make you successful. All right. I'm a firm believer in not having my partner out the window, because I want my partner in there with me to split the room and search, because one of us has to go to the door, if there is one, and isolate that, right? So while I'm searching on my way to the door, my partner can be in there with me, hopefully with a thermal imager, getting the layout and helping clear that space, right? That would just be my preference. Now, head first, feet first. Again, a debate that many people have. At first, I was a head first only person. Yeah, I want to go in, and so that as I slide in the window, I can get my live fire layout, you know, of the ground. And the more I do this, the more I realize that there is benefits to stepping in. You know, understand that when you make that dive, you're committed, right? So when I step in, if something changes, maybe that door that isn't there, or maybe I couldn't get to it quick enough and the fire conditions rapidly change, that's that much quicker I can get out versus diving in, you know, and then having to go, oh crap, and then dive back out. So just some things to consider when you're talking DES. Pablo, I know you love DES. Do you have anything you want to add?
Second floor VES is just food for thoughts. You know, like just it's discussion. Do you have both? Do you have the member going inside and one member staying at the ladder? Do you have one member staying on the ground? Do you have both members inside the room? Obviously, I see what John put here on the chat about depending on room size, which is a great note that you can't, room size goes a long way in understanding what you're going to do. Having said that, I actually from a second floor standpoint, and you have, let's say you're looking at the Bravo side of a structure or the Charlie side of a structure, and you have multiple windows up on a second floor, and you have a ladder and you have a ladder thrown, you know, do you do more harm than good by going up the as the second rescuer? Do you do more harm than good by going up to the window and staying on that ladder? You know, if your partner has to bail out because conditions got rough, you're on the ladder. If you're if you're on the ladder and you don't see the other windows, maybe there's someone on the other windows, you know, with a little wave, like, hey, help, I'm in this window. You don't see that. So maybe when you're from when you're on the ground, maybe you're able to scan the side of the house a little bit better. You're able to look at the other windows to see what's going on in the eaves. Is the fire in the attic? Is it, you know, are conditions getting worse? So just food for thought on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's you know, everyone's got a different approach, you know, depending on how often you've done it, or you know, maybe the way that you were taught or shown, or maybe even the way you modified it for your frame, right? And what I mean by frame is like you as the individual. You know, if you got long arms, you might be able to get a better push. If I got short arms, I might actually have to grab stuff differently, right? So it's good to get that insight from everybody, because when we're talking about learning and teaching, I don't want anybody to take what I say or anybody else instructors or any of these other instructors and what they say and say, well, that's the way it's got to be, because it certainly isn't. This is just our way. This is our preference. But I do want you to take it into training and try it out and see what works for you and what doesn't. And if you like something that maybe doesn't work the way it does for me or anybody else, modify it. Use that in conjunction with another technique and maybe find your own way. You might find out that that's better, and then you could teach that to other people. So definitely not trying to say that it has to be one way or the other.
Sean, you're absolutely right. You got to try it both ways or every single way that you can. When teaching about saws and cutting saws, I go back to riding a skateboard. You used to have to go goofy footed sometimes, right?
Yeah.
All right. Goofy footed. Some people don't know what that is. You got to use your less dominant side. So sometimes a saw will put you up against the edge of a roof. You can't cut it like you normally do. So you got to be able to use it with your other side. You got to get ambidextrous with what we do in the fire service.
I completely agree. Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you for adding that in there, John.
Well, then it's funny because you see them do the firefighter dance where they're trying to find that comfortable position and they're just wasting time, and then you get firefighter frustration marks on the wherever.
Yeah. I mean, you look at even something as the Denver drill. How many times has that been modified and changed and shown that we could have done it a multitude of ways and accomplish the same results? So.
Because there's something that's going to show up and throw a monkey wrench in the normal way we do it.
Absolutely.
That's why we have to have the toolbox and plans A, B, C, and Z just to get it done, because something else is going to go wrong, because it can go wrong.
Yeah. And I love that you put that term toolbox in there, because one of the things that I absolutely hate is when people use it, but they don't know what it means, right? We'll do a training or something. We're like, oh, another tool for the toolbox. What did you learn? What is saying, yeah, okay, I'm going to tuck it away for later and never train on it, but it's in the toolbox. Because in order for it to be in your toolbox, you have to use it and you have to know what it's used for. Otherwise, it's useless, right? You wouldn't look at a carpenter or a mechanic or whatever and have a bunch of tools. And when you say, hey, what's that for? I don't know. It's just another tool in the toolbox.
They understand the why.
Right. But the application is the most important part. Anybody can understand the why for anything.
Reps and sets equals muscle memory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So here we are, as of the survey, over 200 documented rescues from doing DES. That's since the survey started. That to me, that's a lot. That's a pretty good number. And if you want, that's a win. That's somebody that we were able to pull out from an environment that was going to kill them. So survival rate when we do a DES, almost 50%. That is a great finding, because that just further proves that the quicker we get in there and we go and we can assess these areas, whether it be systematically or maybe going beyond the door in that effort, we got in there quick. And that's what adds the benefit to our victims of surviving. So the last known line of duty death was actually in 1989. All right. That was out of New York City. It's off Tower Ladder 131. All right, firefighter Devaney. He was operating as the outside vent man on a 4-story building, and there were reports of a mother and children trapped on the 4th floor. So being the OD man, his crew takes the roof. They find the mother and the children, never gets relayed back to him. He takes the window on the 3rd floor, operating above the fire, goes in and searches. Relatively quickly after that, the room flashed over and caused him to have 2nd and 3rd degree burns all over his body, which were fatal to him. So that is what caused him to perish in this fire. But there's a couple of things that we were able to take away from this VES. If you read the report, and I'll drop that in the notes, it wasn't even documented as a VES. But knowing what we know, we're able to determine that. So Jordan, if you would just go one more slide, please.
Yeah.
So here's the building. Okay, this is the layout. There's a VES location on the 3rd floor. Fire floor was right there on floor 2. Victims were found on the 4th floor, right? So as you could see, he was operating above the fire. That is a very, I don't want to say dangerous, but that has to be calculated appropriately. Otherwise, what we learn from that is that fire is going to do what? It's uncontrolled, right? It's not being suppressed. It's going to make its way path of least resistance, which is now that open window that is at that VES location on the 3rd floor, right? So the furnishings that are inside that building also matter at this point, because if they off gas quickly and they light off, now you're trapped, right? So understanding that what you do or what you don't do has consequences. Go one more floor or one more slide, please. So here's what we learned from it, right? Passing by, and Pablo talked about this last night, we don't ever want to pass by fire. That's not what we advocate. But passing by or going above uncontrolled fire can be deadly, right? The auto exposure from this fire is what trapped that firefighter on the 3rd floor. Mm-hmm. This was a very risky VES. And honestly, when I'm looking for victims, I probably would have done the same thing that he did, because you're in search mode. However, what we failed to do was realize, like, how much time do I have, right? That's where we go back to bagging our fire. I know where the fire is been because it's underneath me. And I know as soon as I take this window, that's where it's going to be at. And I know if I don't make this search quickly, coupled with fire attack, well, now we know where it's going, right? So the biggest thing that I want to tell people here is when we're in search mode and we're searching for victims, whenever we have a report that victims have been found, we need to make sure that those are not victims that we're still searching for, right? This firefighter went in that 3rd floor apartment building because it wasn't relayed down that the mother and her children were already rescued from members of his company on the 4th floor, right? So he's still thinking that they're trapped. And that is where that lack of communication can get us in a jam. So anything else anyone have to add?
Nope.
All right. So we've hit on this a couple times, VES beyond the door, right? Does everybody know what that means? Is this kind of foreign news to anybody, or has somebody heard of it in some way? So what it generally is when we go ahead and we do a VES, what we're saying is that we're starting a search, right? That's where our search is initiated from. Now, we are often trained to do what? Go in and come out, repositioning ladder, go on the next one, come out and do that. How much more effective can we be if we don't do that and we assess our environment, right? This is where me personally, this is why I like my partner with me. Because if I get to that door and we've isolated and we've cleared this room and there's nobody there, I'm going to open that door back up and I'm going to assess my environment. If I have rooms that are relatively close by and I can make that search happen, I'm going to do that. So now I've transitioned from my VES to a primary search.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, people go, oh, well, you're moving through the structure and, you need, that's freelancing. No, because we all have radios and we can say, search crew to command, be advised, DES room is clear. We have tenable conditions in the hallway. We're initiating a primary search from DES location. Now they know where you are, right? So we go in and we do what? We isolate ourselves behind that closed door like we are taught, and we search. Now you can leave somebody in the hallway to monitor conditions if you want to, or you can bring them in that room. That is totally your choice. But the whole point of moving through the structure this way is to constantly assess, okay, now I've cleared this space, can I move on further? If you can't, that is where your search is. That's where your search ends, right there. You've done as much as you could.
From a private dwelling standpoint, from and our bread and butter, especially down here in my area, if I'm searching inside and Duffy, you're let's just say you're outside, you're at that window or whatnot, and I do a quick and I get in that room, I get low, I scan, I get to the hallway, and I want to do a VES beyond the door. All I got to do is bump Sean up. Hey, Sean, come up to me. Sean, come up to me. Sean comes inside. He bumps up, and we're doing essentially a primary search just from the outside. It goes from a VES from a primary search where we're still having that orient man sitting at that doorway, monitoring conditions, et cetera, et cetera. I just bump them up from the window to the doorway so I can do my my hallway search or the other room search or whatnot.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's really the thing is what else does that give us the ability to do? It gives us the ability to gain intel, right? So if we have a hose line operating in that building and we say, hey, we still have heavy fire up here, that tells us one or two things. They're either A, not at the seat of the fire, or B, maybe we have multiple fires to address, right? So we could very well need a secondary line. So relaying that back to command or even your interior hose team is huge. There is a third thing that has a benefit to it as well. If we do find a separate fire, maybe this is an arson fire or whatever the case is, we now have the ability from the interior past that VES room to isolate that area of the fire if there's a door there, and we can close it, which we report, hey, there's a fire behind this door, or whatever the situation is. Point I'm getting at is by going beyond that door, we are now more efficient, not only as a search crew, but as an intel crew, and really keeping tabs on us and everything else going on in that structure or places that people may not even be able to see. So to think about that, this is something that you really, really need to train on to operate efficiently. But I think if we can start doing this as a standard practice, we'll start seeing a lot more wins when it comes to our victims, or maybe even reduce damage to the structure, isolating the fires, things like that. All right, go ahead and move on, Jordan. So Pablo and I, like I said, we worked at the same station for a while when we worked for the same county department. This is a house that was in our first due. This is a pretty standard construction on that side of town. What I always ask people is, you're showing up to this, pretend it's on fire. Where do you think your bedrooms are? Now, what most people tell me is, oh, on the other side of the garage, right? There's an entranceway, there's a garage, there's a door that leads in, looks probably like a split floor plan. Yes, you are half correct, okay? Right there in that front window, which most people would think is probably a dining room or maybe a living room, is actually a bedroom. So go ahead and switch the slide, Jordan. All right, there we are. So I know you can't really see it all that well, but number one, all these building or rooms are numbered 1 through 4. Number 1 is that first bedroom. Your standard VES will probably work very well here. Now, if you go to room 4, which is the master bedroom, and we do a traditional VES and we choose to keep one person at the window because that's what we were taught to do, look at all this space that one person has to search by themselves, and look at that long hallway. Now, oh, well, one person's at the window with a thermal imager and a flashlight so that they can mark their location and they can hear me. I'm going to tell you right now, depending on the fire conditions and smoke conditions, if there's a lot of smoke in that room, good luck. Yeah. Smoke is dense. I'm not going to hear you, and I'm definitely not going to see your light because it's going to reflect back, right? So the further I am away from that window, less likely I am to hear you or anything else. And now I'm in no man's land by myself. I'd much rather have you with me so that you can help guide me and we can be more effective. Now, if you look at the doors, outside of there, there's that area that we can sweep, right? Well, we find people in living rooms and kitchens and stuff, right? We have statistics to show that. So we would miss all that area if we did it. And then now if you bump down to room 2 or 3, same thing, traditional primary or VES. Once you break that plane of that door and you close it, look at all that space you missed. If we were to come in room 3, take the window, go and do a VES, close that door and never open it and check to see what other spaces are around there, man, we just did a disservice to any victims that are either A, further down that hallway, or B, in room 2. Because we're right there by the door that leads to room 2, and we've just left to do what? Reposition ourselves and come in a window when we were literally a foot or 2 away from being able to enter that space. So I just throw this in here for some orientation aspects of you to see why this is a beneficial tactic for us to start employing, and that it does make sense and it is successful. All right, so these are just some indications that we want to take into consideration, assessing our environment like we talked about. and then making sure that before we exit the structure that we check the hallway once more. If the fire attack is getting a handle on things, then we're good. We can push forward. Now, if there's no fire attack underway, or that body of fire is just too large, then we do need to be real with ourselves and say, hey, I can't make this happen. Maybe reverting backwards to that traditional DES method somewhere else in this structure is of benefit to me. So we talked about a little bit on removing a victim. Now we're going to talk about what we do when we find them. So we all do Mayday training, right? That is something that we're I'd like to think that we're well versed in. And what do we always do? Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. We say it 3 times because the first time it may not have been heard. Second time, someone's like, wait, what was that? By the third time, you're like, that is definitely a Mayday, right? Well, we want to do the same thing with our victims. If I find a victim, I want somebody to know, especially if we're split search, or you might be in the room next to me. Victim, victim, victim. That third time, I am going to know, wait, somebody just said something. And that's going to make me pause and stop, right? It's no different than when you're in distress. They teach people, like, if you have a gun or whatever, you fire it off 3 times. That's a universal sign for distress. Well, hey, I'm trying to communicate something, and my voice is muffled. I'm going to say it 3 times very loudly. Then we need to know, once we get there, we're going to do our 360 sweep around them, make sure there's no other victims that need removal. But we also want to assess our need. Are we able to ventilate? Is that something we can do? Or do we even need to? So don't wait for a stop in radio traffic to start removing your victim. Just start. And then when you get a chance, either have somebody else do it for you, or you get on the radio and do it when there's free moment. The longer we halt the progressiveness of trying to move that victim, the worse it is for them. So we found them, great. Now we need to remove them in the most efficient manner and quickly without wasting time jabbering on the radio, things like that. So one more. There you go, Jordan. Thank you. So we want to include our location just like we do with a Mayday, right? Because what if we isolate ourselves behind a closed door and we're in this room and our last known room was our original VES location? I need to tell somebody I am now in this room with a victim. I broke out the window, whatever. I'm on side Charlie, come find me. Whatever it is that you need to relay, maybe you need a ladder, some sort of communication. Let somebody know where you are. That is huge in anything we do in the fire service. Quickest way, all right? We talked about that. You don't want to bring them out the way you came if you don't have to. If there's a window right there, then take them out the window. And then, when we find victims, they're not going to always be unconscious. So before we start grabbing and getting all crazy and we're like, see if they can help you in some sort of way. Because if they just need assistance, man, then it's better for us to do that and assist them out than it is for us to grab a hold of them. They're already panicked and scared. We need to reassure them that we're there to help them, especially when it comes to children. It's really scary, our face masks going off and all the sounds and everything. So pay attention to that. But biggest thing is, depending on who you ask when you find a victim, they're going to say, oh, you just take them outside. Look, I'm going to tell you, I've been in this structure. I know where things are at. I know what I searched. I know what I didn't search. So if I find a victim, I'm tossing them off, and then I'm coming back in and completing my search if I'm able to, right? If you're not, because you're low on air, well, then, yeah, that's fine. But if you're able to do that, it's really imperative that we finish the search that we started. Okay. And then, obviously, EMS care gets done outside with paramedics and EMTs, right? Yeah. All right. Pablo, I know this is something that you're passionate about, so why don't I let you go ahead and talk on the 2 in, 2 out for a moment.
I mean, literally 2 in, 2 out, obviously, as we all know, goes out the window unless we have, if we have any type of confirmed entrapment, and well, we don't know, like John said earlier, we don't know it's vacant until we clear it. So I'm not gonna, I won't beat too much of a dead horse on this. We had a very high profile issue going on here in the state of Florida with a neighboring county, and obviously it yeah, it got addressed. It got addressed nationwide, you know, sometimes we got to do what we got to do, boys. You know, so I mean, I won't beat it too much because I know the guys. I know the guys in that department, so I'll stay away from that. Right. So
I respect that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I'll tell about Pablo is if anybody knows what he's talking about, that it is a good department. They got some really good guys. They just had a bad employee that made a bad decision. Okay. And you can work for the best department and that's going to happen, you know? So I'm with him
Yeah.
on that. Unfortunately, the outcome was probably less than desirable for any one of us. I wouldn't wish that on anybody to have to encounter. However, getting back to the 2 in, 2 out, what I'm going to say is that even, I don't know how it is for anybody else, but here in the state of Florida, they changed that directive and they never even told us, right? It used to be like incipient stage fire, life safety, all that 2 in, 2 out can go out the window, and they changed it to it had to be a confirmed life hazard. Well, guess what? Every fire I go to, I'm going to assume that there's a confirmed life hazard unless I have reason not to believe so, which
Absolutely.
probably not going to happen for me anyway, unless there's smoke and fire blowing out of every orifice of that building. However, I don't think you can see it, but maybe you can. It talks about here that nothing in this directive is meant to preclude people from making a search. So what I am going to say about 2 in, 2 out is if you're going to tell me to follow this directive, then you better damn well know what that directive means. You can't tell me to follow something and then tell me that nothing in this directive is meant to preclude me from making a search. That doesn't make any sense. Because you just gave me limitations on when I could and couldn't search, but told me that this directive isn't meant to keep me from doing such. Come on.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to this next one, which is really my favorite because I like to stir the pot on this. You know, because it's good positive discussion. Right here, it says this letter constitutes OSHA's interpretation of the requirements. So now you're telling me that nothing was meant to preclude me from searching to begin with, and now you're telling me that this is just your professional interpretation. Well, guess what? You're not the one out on the street making grabs and you know, putting fires out and all that other stuff. So I really don't care what your interpretation of my job is because you don't do my job, right? How are you going to tell somebody that, hey, man, this is just how I interpret it, and then expect me to live up to that? You can't, right? That doesn't make any sense either. So my personal 2 pet peeves on the whole issue, by no means am I going to stand here and tell you to violate your department's SOPs or anything like that. Just food for thought to think like we shouldn't always just take things, because that is one of the biggest reasons why people do not search 2 in, 2 out. That's like the greatest fallback plan. I didn't have 2 in, 2 out. Great.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is you don't understand your job. That's really what you're saying. And you're using that as a fallback plan. And we're allowing people to do so. And people are dying. Right. And I'm just not okay with that. So, yeah, end of rant.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Chris, for the link.
Yeah, well, if anything, and yeah, I agree with you. I won't talk about the part. I don't do that kind of stuff, but it is one of the best learning tools. I mean, if it's not confirming what we're here talking about tonight, I don't know what is. I mean, literally, you've got a heavily involved structure in the front of the house, and the woman is in the backside of the house, still on the phone with dispatch, still screaming and yelling, saying, "I can hear him, I can hear him, I can hear him." And unfortunately, the events transpired the way they did, but it couldn't be a more perfect example of why we had to get a search done, no matter what.
And I will say this real quick, and this probably goes for every department from Key West to New York City right here, boys. The difference between us and that link right there to that department is that they just happen to get caught. Every department has guys like that.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you do. And, I'm not going to mention the department or any of that stuff, but I will mention this fire because Pablo, you brought up a good point. Just happened to get caught. This happens all the time around the country where we don't make searches and people die, and it just never really put in the limelight the way it was in this particular instance.
That's it.
And, I personally know of a fire in a department that I worked for that they waited and waited and waited to do the search until, third and fourth engine were arrived on scene. And the question was, well, did you go in and get a live fire layout? No, there's heavy fire blowing out the window. Great. but was it just on the window, right? And the more you talk about the situation, I'm not going to go into crazy details about it because it doesn't matter. But the more you questioned the situation, the more the picture was being painted that this was just a very heavily involved bedroom. But because they're on an ambulance, they can't search because there's no water on scene. And that pisses me off because you know what? If you're going to show up on a scene, whether you're on an ambulance or not, and you're going to take the step to put your bunker gear on, and at that point, you are signifying that you are no longer medical and that you are fire personnel, and you better go do firefighting duties. If you're not going to do so, then just stay in your truck or don't put your gear on, you know, because there's no difference if you're standing in the yard with a full PPE and air pack on. If you're not performing any functions,
Yeah,
you're useless, right?
absolutely.
So, and I don't say that to be malicious. I just say that because it's truly what I believe in, and I feel it to be fact. At that point, you're just an overdressed spectator. And, you know, I could take somebody who bought a firefighting costume at the Halloween store and put them in that same scenario, and they're doing the same exact thing you are, but you're supposed to be the professional getting paid for it. You know, there is a fine line of when you need to be held accountable for what you do and do not do.
Yeah.
So sorry for that long tangent, but we talked about Maydays, right? Project Mayday, it evaluated over 6,000 Maydays. And what they really found out is that by us occupying the interior, we actually saved the most lives. Not only ours, but civilians, right? And if you look here on the statistics, anytime there was a Mayday, 36% of the time we self-rescued. Okay, that's good. You know, self-rescue is always a good thing. Call the Mayday and you self-rescue and you don't need it. Awesome. 27% of the time, you're rescued by another interior crew or your own crew, which means that those people are inside already operating in the building when this Mayday happened. So they were able to get to you quicker than saying Mayday, Mayday, Mayday and waiting for a RIT team. If you go all the way down to the bottom, 7.5% were rescued by RIT. So look at all those numbers. That equates to 90% or more of the time that a Mayday happened, we were rescued by interior crews. Okay, and I'm not saying that RIT teams or RIC teams, whatever you choose to call them, are not beneficial and not needed on the fire ground. They absolutely are. I'm just saying I think we rely too heavily on that role in our algorithm of the way things need to go, and it prevents us from doing searches. Oh, there's no 2 in 2 out. We don't have a RIT team, so we can't do a search. Well, the statistics show that if that is your worry, then hey, if I've trained and I understand what my roles and responsibilities are, I'm more likely to be rescued by guys that are in this building with me than that RIT team that you're waiting on. So just my opinion. So take it as for what you want. But that's what I got from that. So Justin McWilliams, Nick Ledeen, all those guys, man, they're doing just tremendous stuff with Firefighter Rescue Survey, getting all the statistics for us and just really hitting it hard. And if you get a chance and you haven't already, you really need to look those guys up and see what's occurring on our fire grounds. Putting them first is safer for us. We just showed you that with the stats of the Maydays, right? 88% chance that with no RIT team, search crew will be rescued by the interior hose team, which means what? Fire attack and search simultaneously together are paramount, right? When you support that, man, you got all the help you need. How many people does it take to put out a fire? The nozzle man, right? So you got at least one extra guy in there. If you're a 2-man search team and you got a 2-man hose team and someone goes down, you've got another person that can come help you remove this firefighter from that situation while you're still suppressing the fire. That's huge. You know, that means you don't have to stop firefighting activities to now do a rescue of your own personnel. You know, when RIT was assigned before search, 60% chance. So we went from an 88 to a 60%, not terrible, still over 50. I like those numbers, but you know what? I want to know that I have the greatest odds, and that's really what we're after. So go ahead and go to the next one, Jordan. So if we want to make a difference on the fire ground in this about 3 hours that we've been at this talking, it's really about making a difference, right? Making a difference in ourselves, but making a difference in the victims as well. So you got to constantly train and improve on your craft. You know, none of us are ever going to be perfect. We make mistakes, and that's okay. But the training is where we get better, right? know the facts, right? Don't just take something someone said because it sounded cool or whatever. Or, oh, I don't know, that's just what I've always been told. Don't just take that as standard. Challenge people, find out why, right? It's okay to do that. You don't have to be like disrespectful and arrogant about it, but you should know why it is that you're doing what you're doing. Because if you don't, then why are you doing it in the first place, right? Um, Biggest leadership fail, in my opinion, when you ask that question, because I said so. Great. Okay. That doesn't tell me anything, right? I legit want to know why I'm doing this so that I can find out where I'm deficient and where I need to get better, right? Because if I don't know why I'm doing something, I have no idea how it's supposed to be done in the beginning. So adopt a them first mindset. Right? Everything we do, whether it be a medical call or a fire call or going to a traffic accident, whatever situation we're there for, it really is about them. It's not about us. So we need to make sure that our mindset is always one that puts them ahead of our own needs. Um, you swore to do this. Nobody's forced you to be here. You are here on your own free will. You took that oath. You put that badge on. You did whatever you said. At some point, you said, yes, this is what I want to do. So do some self-reflection. If it still is what you want to do and you need to get better, then hey, by all means, we all need to get better. Let's do it together. If you don't want to deal with any of it, then like I said before, that should be your gut check to find something else to do, because it's not fair to punish the victims of an emergency because you don't care about what their needs are and you don't care about being a professional and you're okay with being, a minimalist and just getting by because you get a good pension, you get to sleep, you get to eat, and all that good stuff. So that's pretty much all I got, really. So if you want to go back to that one last slide, Jordan, go back one. Nope, one after this one. Right there. If you guys want to take a screenshot of that, do whatever you want to do. I don't care, because this right here is what it's about. Educated and aggressive, right? You can be educated, but you need that aggression to put things in action and start getting things done. So again, thank you for your time. I know it's a little long-winded. I apologize. Hopefully you guys learned something. I'm just going to turn over to the other instructors now in case they want to say something before we close it out.
Hey, I appreciate you guys' time. I have one more kind of speed round of just different things that I have found in my run district that I kind of want to talk about. Actually, can you guys still see this?
Let me see. Hold on a second.
Hold on, it paused.
Yeah, I can see it, but it's frozen.
Which one is it? Establish and maintain?
Can you guys see a crib?
No.
No.
No, I'm still on the.
Yeah. The fire scene.
All right, hold on one second. Where's this recording? How about now?
There it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is the stuff that's I've kind of picked up. This is actually a family member's house. Their layout of this house is you come up a flight of stairs to a landing and makes a 90-degree turn, and then you see the bedrooms, right? You might pick this up right away with a tick or whatever, and you go straight to the crib to do your crib search, but you may not look over and see the bunk bed that's in the same room, and how to search the bunk beds. You got to search both beds on those things. And kids' rooms are not always this clean, right?
Right. Oh, no.
So those are things that I'm always trying to pay attention to.
Jordan,
yes.
Real quick, go back to the crib slide. All right, you're going to discuss how to do that one.
So I do the crib dump. Basically, I pull the crib to me, and then the kid or whoever slides down, I can feel that heavy weight, and I just scoop. That's how I've been taught to do it. I don't know if you have a different technique.
No, that's not picking the kid up into the ideal H environment, staying low and pulling it down. Perfect. That's seeing if you were going to go with the technique.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I have the video, but it's a little long, but it's on an imager in a training burn we did. And the guy went to do the evolution, and the crib just fell apart. It fell apart. It was hilarious.
Wow.
But, you know, I mean, that's reality, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, this is a part of it. I don't know if it'll play all the way, but watch the convective currents going in the room, isolating yourself. Here's the crib. Get a good scan of the room. Obviously, I did it wrong. I started high and worked my way down. You would want to start low and work up. But you can see that's the crib. That's a focal point that I want to attack and go search. This is that training can that we were in for those types of situations there.
You want to go back to the bunk bed real quick then?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that you'll find on a bunk bed is a low bed. It's lower than usual, right?
Yeah.
The bottom bunk. So the second you hit that with your one hand, immediately go up with your other hand and feel above you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Again, with a thermal imaging camera, you're going to be able to call that out from the doorway or whatever, because you're going to do your quick tick scan first, see if you have any victims in the middle, whatever. But again, if you don't have your thermal imaging camera, you change to a different room, reach up immediately, then sweep, do the bed sweep up top.
Yep.
So
this was a college dorm this is actually technically my second due, but still in my fire department's area. And this is the reality of what you're going to search in most places. On the back side of those sheets is another bed.
So you got SROs going up, illegal single room occupancies.
Yeah, this is actually an actual college dorm pod that's in there. So they have 4 rooms to 1 common area inside of there. This is
we had a similar setup. We've got college dorms in our area, and they're mainly like 2-bedroom, 2-bath. But yeah, these idiots, they do the same thing, man. They put these sheets up across and then they stick another bed in the room because they're all friends, you know, and they're trying to, you know, save on rent and money for.
And I don't know if you can see where the mouse is. That's the window to that room.
Is it really?
Yeah. So, you know, if you were trying to do a VES situation, stuff that it blinds, curtains, all that stuff can get you real tangled up and, you know, might make you a little disoriented if you're not careful.
One of the things that you can try and if you're feeling for, especially if it's hot water baseboard or if it's not forced hot air or it's steam, you're going to find those on the exterior, and they're a lot of times they're underneath the windowsills.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Okay.
Just another picture of a dorm room. You know, this is the stuff you're going to be searching and trying to mitigate through. You know, these are some of the cleaner dorms that we found during our inspections. And then the one thing I realized is these kids are actually freaking smart. You know, they use their shoe holder to hold their mac and cheese. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing what they do. This was a mutual aid fire a while back. It ended up being just a bedroom fire, but you know, that size up, man, you know, 1.5, 2-story, all those words matter. 1.5, I'm thinking fire and void spaces and searchable places that you wouldn't normally think of upstairs. I always, when I teach my forcible entry, I teach that it's more, I think forcible entry is a tactic. And once you cross that threshold, the time starts. And I believe in that 10% search. Everything can initiate from the front door. You know, always look behind the door, anticipate the layout. We know all the things that we covered tonight. People are hitting the chat real quick.
Oh, that's just me.
Okay. You know, so, you know, what's behind the door, you can see in the backside, it's another room. It's the victim. It's whatever that thing is hiding in there. This actually ended up being 1.5. It looked like a 1.5 in the front, but it actually had a walkout basement in the back. It was built into a hill on the Charlie side.
Changing topography.
Mm-hmm. This is
real quick. Going back to what you're calling. I used something from Chief Turpak from Jersey City. He's retired deputy out of there. He gave a good thing for size up. If you know that you're calling it a half a story, you know it's a pitch roof. If you call it even, it's a flat. Just something for truck guys to know. If officers arrive and, you know, you're calling that half story, you know you got a pitch.
Okay.
Just something to throw out there. But again,
That's
everybody's got to be on that same page to understand what the officer's calling out or the incident commander.
Okay.
So I guess this is my grandmother-in-law's house, and the one thing about this is looking at it, it looks like, you know, no issues getting through the front door or anything, but it's packed, right? This is during Christmas time. This is where she keeps animals and things like that. So the front door may not be the best door, and then there's the back door. I got my people over it. There's the back door. So you're going to have difficulties getting in. This is stuff that needs radioed out, because you might have a delay of water on the fire, delay of getting inside. Hey, I'm having difficulties. You know, windows are entry points. It might be one of those situations where the window is the way you got to get in. Don't rule that stuff out for your operations. And then for my rural guys, what is this? Is it a house? Is it a barn, or is it a combination?
Mother-in-law house.
People are making these into
Yeah.
actual residential homes. You can't rule out not doing research on these things. I mean, you've got stuff in your playbook. What's going on? I can name 5 of these in my run district that are occupied.
Got one down the street from me.
What's that?
We got one down the street from me. It's a father-in-law house, but a mother-in-law house. Yeah.
And anything and everything is stored in these, right? So you got to be prepared for those types of fires that could be very violent because of what's stored in the garage part of it. My mutual aid has a ton of these in their area, especially out in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was kind of the house Pablo I was talking about the other night. We call this Brickville. It's the single-story house, you know, 1,000 square foot, but a VES, and these windows in the bedrooms are very difficult. So this is where one of the fires that I truly believe you got to get water in there and take control of that situation to go and do your search. You know,
That's a veneer, right? That's not a true brick, right?
Yeah, correct. You know what? I can't say that for sure. These are pretty old homes. I would assume it's a veneer, but I could be wrong.
Just looking at from the vinyl siding on the right.
Yeah, well, so, you know, what's funny about these houses, a lot of these had a single garage, and then they turned the garage into a room.
Living room.
That's what that looks like, yeah.
Yep. And this is in my station's first due in the village, and these are our pretty common homes. But, you know, this is one of them fires where you're coming in right behind the hose line and trying to make that push into the bedrooms.
Is that Elida? Looks like it's Elida. I know a house in Elida looks like that, yeah.
Yep. And then the wonderful air conditioning in the window, that is a signals that this is a used space in the house. So use that as your size up clue for what you need to do to get in there. And I always ask the question, push the air conditioner in or pull it out. I always pull the air conditioner out because someone might be underneath it.
And especially if there's a promotion for you, get it out as far as you can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm joking. Like, don't drop it on your chief.
And that's all I have for all that stuff. And guys, man, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your guys' family sacrifice for you listening for going on over 3 hours. My goodness. But like I said, I think there's a lot of passion in this webinar tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you to Schwartz for putting this on. I appreciate all the guys that were on the speaking panel. You guys are awesome. Any questions or anything?
Jordan, just one technical question. I couldn't figure out how to copy this link to get the certificate.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. I got you written down. I'll get
Thank you.
Don't worry about it. I know where we work.
For us old timers.
Any questions for any of the guys that were speaking tonight from any of the 40-some people that stuck it out?
Yeah. While we're waiting, in case anybody wants to type, just a random thought, man. I said it last night. We say it all the time. You can fake a lot of shit, but you can't fake passion.
Yep.
True, brother.
Absolutely. For those that I will make CEs to pass out. Give me a couple of days. It's going to take a little bit to get that done. I will email those out to you. I'll just use a roster from the sign up. Guys, do you have anything else? Any last words for it?
No, I'm good, man. I appreciate everybody giving us some of their time, and I know it's pretty precious these days. So thanks for letting us rant on for over 3 hours, and thank you, Jordan, for having us on, man. I appreciate the invite.
No, it was a good time, man. I like I said, I enjoy talking to firemen. It's someone put in there. It's the same people, different circus. It's the truth.
Ron Givens, he said that. Yeah. Ron's a good. He works with us quite a bit, man. Ron's good. Very knowledgeable.
Ron's a solid dude.
Yeah, very knowledgeable.
Well, if everyone's good, we'll call this a night. And again, thank you to Schwartz for putting this on. This will. I got a feeling it's going to take a while to download, so give me a couple of days to get the link. But again, thank you all. And John, it was nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you, Jordan.
It was nice
Appreciate
to meet you.
it, boys. Thank you.
Nice meeting you,
Chris
Jordan.
and Sean.
Nice meeting you, Chris.
Yep.
Talk
Thank
to y'all
you guys.
later.
Stay safe out there, all right?
Yep. Take care.
Likewise.
All right, see you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right, see you, boys.
Just you and me, Jordan.
No, there's still some people signing on.
I'm getting ready to leave here. Bye.
26 guys. All right, guys, I'm out. Sean, thank you very much for
Thank you.
asking me
Thank
to play along tonight.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate you coming out.
Nah, dude, it's
That's-
awesome.
To all those who don't know, this is like my favorite person in the world right here. So,
Oh,
I appreciate you spending your evening with me, John.
dude, it was great. It's been, again, like we were talking before, it's been a long month and almost month and a half, a little over a month. But it was great to finally be able to talk, not have any issues with my breathing and all that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm glad you were able to make it through the whole thing. I know last time you did one of these, you had to dip out a little early.
I bailed out when we were doing it. It's a good sign,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Finally getting stronger, and we'll hopefully by Friday I'll know more where I'm at.
Absolutely, brother. Well,
All right, you guys stay safe with this crazy ass COVID shit out there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
absolutely, we'll do.
You too.
All right.
Likewise. Good
Stay
night.
healthy, guys. Take care.
Okay.
Sure, I'll
See you,
talk to
buddy.
you later. See you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
See you,
All right.
John. It's
Bye,
good seeing
Jordan.
you.
Hey, see you, John.
See you, Chris.